Good evening. Welcome to the January 24th meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education here at Field Elementary. We're so welcome and so happy that you have had a chance to come here and enjoy this great school and enjoy the presentations from these students that we're about to see. At this time, I will also want to mention that prior to this meeting, the board held a work session to discuss organization and operations of the board. No action was taken. At this time, if you would, please join us for our traditional moment of silence. Thank you. Please stand for the presentation of colors presented by Seneca High School Marine Corps JROTC Color Guard and the Pledge of Allegiance led by District 2 elementary students. Thank you. Please be seated. At this time, I'd like to invite middle school students representing Barrett Traditional, Highland, and Jefferson County Traditional Middle Schools to come up and read our vision statement.
All Jefferson County Public School students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you very much. All right, so again, welcome to Field Elementary. This is part of a regular series of general meetings that we are doing where we go out into the district to our schools, so we're not always stuck at central office at Van Hoos. And this gives us opportunity not only to be in the schools themselves and see the students and see the presentations, but also to get out into the community and give you all a chance to come into one of our schools and see the great, fantastic support and learning that goes on in our schools every day. At this time, I'm going to introduce the board member who represents this district. This is in District 2, and that is Dr. Chris Kolb. We're kind of throwing Chris or Dr. Kolb, I should say, into the deep end of the pool here. Dr. Kolb was recently elected to the Board of Education this past fall. And a little bit about Dr. Kolb, as he is a graduate of Atherton High School. He has his PhD from Johns Hopkins University, and he is currently an anthropology and urban studies professor at Spalding University. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kolb.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Yes. Well, I've been on the board 22 days, so I thought it was about time that I hosted a big meeting like this. Thank you to the wonderful support staff for putting it all together. We have a video presentation in just a second, but I've, in the process of preparing for this, learned some really interesting things about Field Elementary, most of which you may already know. But Field Elementary opened in 1915, so it goes back a bit, with 5 teachers and 155 students. That student-to-teacher ratio is a little too high for me, so they should have really gotten it lower, but you can laugh, it's okay. And Field is one of our most involved schools in the community and vice versa. Many business and community organizations are actively involved. There are so many wonderful things about Field that we had a chance to see today as we took a tour from the wonderful library that many of you just had dinner in. And thank you to JCPS Nutrition for a fabulous dinner, to some really awesome computer editing and electronics stuff that they're doing here, to a number of other things, including their Chinese, their focus on Mandarin Chinese, which we're going to get a taste of in just a little bit. So now not now. So first I'm going to introduce to you the assistant principal of Field Elementary, Mr. Stephen Stark, who is going to, I believe, share a few words with us if he is here. Yes, Mr. Stark, there you are. Yeah.
Hello. We wanted to just take a moment and welcome all of you to Field Elementary. We are very pleased to host tonight. We have had a lot of support from our teaching staff, our classified staff, and of course our students and parents. It has been truly a community effort, and we want to thank all the tech support that came out from the district to help set up today, to all our teachers who were very flexible and joined in to make tonight possible. So on behalf of Dr. Rivera and the rest of the staff, we want to welcome you to Field Elementary.
Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
I did want to say special thank you we got these gift boxes from Field.
Yeah.
We were just wondering if anyone could tell us what it says on here.
Ms. Fisher? Ms. Fisher can.
The words in the center means happiness. It's a traditional the sign for Chinese New Year. On the left side said the Field Elementary School, which is 芳草地小学. And on another side said 2017 year.
Thank you so much.
I hope you like it.
Check out this awesome thing that they put in here. That's
You
not
will
one of
see
those
how powerful that fun is.
Okay, yeah.
You might
a
have to
minute.
wave out here.
This isn't one of those that's going to break in 30 seconds, after you get it. So that's great. Thank you very much for welcoming us and for the awesome
welcome.
gifts.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, and looks like we're having some technical issues with the video, so I'm going to hand it back over to Chair Brady.
All right, thank you. And once the video becomes available, just signal me and we will get it going. Is it going? Okay, so fine. We'll just do it that way. Terry will introduce it. So actually, if Terry's going to introduce that, maybe I should introduce Terry. So just want to turn this over to Terry Robinson. She is going to do the introductions for our recognitions and resolutions, and I think you guys are going to be in for a treat because you're about to see a lot of great student demonstrations. So Ms. Robinson.
Dr. Hargan's Board Chair Chris Brady and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. Tonight we have the honor of recognizing and receiving student demonstrations from students in District 2. We begin with a student demonstration from Field Elementary School students who will perform a traditional Chinese Tai Chi fan dance, which will begin with and include the Dragon Dancers. The dance was first introduced during the Han Dynasty and is considered a folk dance that serves various purposes. The students learn Chinese through language and practice of culture. Students, please begin your presentation.
恭喜恭喜，踴跃踴跃！恭喜恭喜，踴跃踴跃！恭喜恭喜，Happy New Year！ 每条大街小巷，每个人一岁，见面第一句话就是恭喜恭喜，恭喜恭喜恭喜你呀！ 恭喜恭喜恭喜你！冬天一道金红，粉丝后的小鸡，弯弯的
华有神功。我是一张弓，战似一棵松，不动不摇坐如钟，走路一阵风。南拳和北腿，少林武当功，太极八卦连环掌，中华有神功。棍扫一大片，那个枪挑一条线，身形好似云中雁，我们豪气冲云天。外练筋骨皮，那个内练一口气呀，刚柔并进不低头，我们心中有天地。我是一张弓，战似一棵松，不动不摇坐如钟，走路一阵风。南拳和北腿，少林武当功，太极八卦连环掌，中华有神功。青锋剑在手，那个双刀就看走。行家功夫一出手，他就知道有没有。手是两扇门，脚下是一条根，四方水土养育了我们中华武术魂。东方一条龙，儿女似英雄，天高地远把面红，中华有神功。东方一条龙，儿女似英雄，天高地远把面红，中华有神功，中华有神功。
I would like for the students to please come forward and take a group picture, please. If we can have the students come back into the gym, please. Board Member Dr. Chris Kolb and Assistant Superintendent Joe Lefford, please come forward and thank the students for their excellent presentation, please. Joining in the recognition is their Assistant Principal, Stephen Stark, and Teacher Chang Fisher. We have some more students coming in. Let's give them a round of applause. They did an excellent job. If we can have some of the students to stand on the stairs for the group photograph, please.
Kind of get on the stairs, yeah, and scoot in.
And move in closer, yes. Move in a little closer, please.
Everybody could look here at me. 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you all.
Thank you, and I'd like to ask the parents of these outstanding students to please stand to be recognized. Thank you. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Chenoweth Elementary School students Logan Miller, Savannah Souder, Anna Ray Watts, Lydia Morgan, and Jiha Kim, who will share with us what they have learned by working in the school's outdoor classroom, how it is used for various activities, and how it has provided engaging learning opportunities for them. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
Hello. Hello, I am Logan Miller. I'm a fourth grader in Mr. Whitenack's class. I will be speaking to you about how our students, parents, and staff have worked to make the Chenoweth Outdoor Classroom a place where students can go to learn about science right outside the school building. But first, my principal wants me to thank our students, parents, and teachers who have worked very hard to make it a fun and exciting place to learn. In our outdoor classroom, I have personally worked to move wood and help build a compost bin. I've raked leaves to fill the compost so we can use it for fertilizer and soil next year. I've helped cut the weeds and clean algae out of the pond so our tadpoles can have sunlight and oxygen to grow into frogs. I've learned about the life cycle of a plant by planting seeds and bulbs and watching the plants grow. I feel proud that I've been able to help build and keep our outdoor classroom a place where all of our students can come and enjoy the real world of science instead of just reading about it in a book or watching a video.
Hi. I am Savannah Soder. I am a fourth grader in Miss Halligan's class. I will be talking to you about how much I have learned in the outdoor classroom. I have learned about the characteristics of living and non-living things by observing trees, watching vegetables grow, and observing flowers bloom. I have learned that all living things must have oxygen, water, food, exchange gases. They must eliminate materials that are not needed. I have been able to learn about decomposition by watching leaves decompose over time in our compost bin. We call this leaf litter, even though it is useful to plants. I have watched fungi grow. The outdoor classroom helps me experience all of these things by being involved in the growing. I love going out there with my class and getting to learn right there where I can feel and see it all happening.
Hi, I am Anaria Watts. I am a fourth grader in Mr. Whiteneck's classroom. When I get to go to the outdoor classroom at my school, I like to watch and learn about the different ecosystems. If you don't know the meaning of ecosystems, it means a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical systems. I get to watch the insects eat the leaves and plants. We even have birds that may come feed on the insects. We have even seen and heard an owl which uses small animals as a food source. Our teachers have helped us learn about the food chain. We have learned a lot about the wildlife that visit our outdoor classroom. We get to do experiments in our science lab with materials from the outdoors. The outdoor classroom is a fun place to learn and do activities.
Hello, I am Lydia Morgan. I am a fourth grader in Miss Halligan's class. I am going to speak to you about what I have learned in the outdoor classroom. I have gone outside with my class to observe and draw plants and animals. I have identified trees by looking at leaves and flowers with the ECHO program. Sometimes we get to research what we will learn or what we saw back inside our classroom. Miss Halligan lets us get on the Chromebooks. We are allowed to read and write about what we are learning before or after we visit through books or on the internet. I have been able to see and touch the different parts of the plant and then draw diagrams of those in my science notebook and nature journal. The best part of the outdoor classroom is we get to use it on the weekends with our Girl Scout troop. Without the outdoor classroom, I wouldn't be as experienced in planting, composting, and growing foods.
Hello, I am Jia Kim. I am a third grader in Miss Grisanti's class. I think the best thing about our outdoor classroom is being able to see the life cycle of the wildlife that lives there. We have tadpoles and turtles in our pond. The pond is its own ecosystem. It is interesting to see the life cycle of the tadpole and watch them grow and change right in our backyard. There is a butterfly garden. We can see and observe their life cycle from egg, caterpillar, chrysalis to butterfly. We have seen and learned about the insects living in the logs like ants, spiders, and termites, and watched them in the daily activities. But the best part for me is the flocks of birds that visit. All of this wildlife we get to observe, sketch, research, speak about, and write about. Our outdoor classroom is a great place to learn. Thank you for letting us share our fun learning experiences.
Dr. Kolb and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Paige Hartstern, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is their principal, Laquita Clay. Students, will you please come forward? Thank you. And I'd like to also ask the parents to stand to be recognized. Our next presentation is from Bloom Elementary School students Ezra Liu, Thomas Weinrich, Ethan Weinrich, Charlie Frank, Sophia Orlova, and Zane Spittler, who will give a brief presentation on how the game of chess is incorporated into their learning, what skills they have developed through playing the game, and how they plan to continue to use their newfound skills and strategies to further enhance their learning experience. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
Hello, my name is Ezra Liu, and I am here with the Bloom Chess team to describe my learning in the game of chess. I'd like to take a moment for anyone in this room who has played chess before to raise their hand. Great, I'm glad to see we have some people here who kind of have an idea of what they're doing. Before I start my presentation, I would like to tell a bit about the basics of chess. In chess, your main goal is to checkmate your opponent's king. You have 16 pieces altogether: your king, queen, rooks, knights, bishops, and pawns. Each piece has its own way of movement, capture, and value. There's not much to say from here that is basic, because if I were to explain further, I would ramble on for hours. Those of you who have played chess should know of the many skills that are developed from playing chess and how they relate to the real world. One skill I have developed is thinking ahead. In chess, you must determine your opponent's next move. For example, if your opponent plans to attack you, you can plan to counter his attack, and if all goes well, gain pieces in the process. One way this relates to the real world is like the one time that I had a science presentation. I had to plan how to incorporate my visual aid in my notes to create an intriguing presentation. Another example is how you must be able to be flexible. In chess, if you are attacking your opponent but realize a greater danger, you must be flexible to react to the threat. In life, you don't really have to worry about being checkmated, but you still have to be flexible about things. In class, our teacher has us work together in small groups. Often during small group work, it helps to be flexible because several people want to have the same job. Now, because I know that Charlie is just itching to say all he can cram into his time, I'll let him talk.
Thank you, Ezra. My name is Charlie Frank, and I will be talking to you about how chess helps me in my life. I play piano like two of my colleagues from the Bloom chess team. It helps us too. And it really, chess, whenever you move the pieces, your hands have to be quick. Like if you're on a timer, you have to be like quick about when you move. So the way that helps me in piano is hand coordination, and my hands are really flexible on the keys, so I can move from one place to another really fast. Another way chess helps me in life is architecture. I really like architecture. I'm very interested in it. And chess, it relates to chess notation in a way. Chess notation is basically the coordinates on a chessboard. So, for example, queen to e5. And measuring depth on a building is related to chess notation, and so is navigating where to put the building. And thank you. And here's Ethan.
Problems, predictions, and mental computation. During 5th grade, note-taking skills become much more important. Notation helps a lot with writing down notes and paying attention to what we are learning. That's how chess helps me in school. Here are a couple of notations that are that's a common opening for a chess game. This is a typical move sequence in chess that's called the opening. Though there are many, this is a sequence that we would play if we were in a chess game. The first move that we did was d4. Ezra did that because he wanted to open up his queen. The next move was nf6. I did that because I wanted to quickly castle to protect my king.
Now, though I know you're itching to hear more about the wonderful game of chess, we do have a time limit, and sadly, we have to end our presentation. Now, again, we are the Bloom Chess Team, and we thank you for all your time and consideration to let us be here today. Also, just as a final note, to all here, I encourage you to find time to try the game of chess, as it is truly a life-changing experience.
Thank you.
Dr. Kolb and Assistant Superintendent Michelle Dillard, please come forward to thank the students for their wonderful presentation. Joining in the recognition is their principal, Jack Jacobs.
Everybody look right here at me. 1, 2, 3. Great. Thank you all.
At this time, I'd like to ask the parents of these outstanding students to please stand and be recognized. Our final student demonstration is from Jefferson County Traditional Middle School, Jos Begaipo, who will share his creative talents and skills through a musical presentation titled Etude for Clarinet by C. Rose. Josh, please come forward to begin your presentation. Dr. Cole, please come forward to thank Josh for his outstanding musical presentation. Joining in the recognition is Principal Terry Reed. And I'd like to ask his parents to please stand to be recognized. This evening, we pay a special tribute to our distinguished Jefferson County Board of Education members in honor of National School Board Recognition Month. Our students, parents, staff, and community take this special opportunity to thank our board members for their outstanding leadership, dedication, and contribution to our schools. It is my pleasure to honor our distinguished board members. Board Member Diane Porter, District 1. Board Member Dr. Chris Kolb, District 2. Board Member Stephanie Horn, District 3. Board Member Benjamin Gees, District 4. Board Member Linda Duncan, District 5. Board Vice Chair Dr. Lisa Wilner, District 6. And Board Chair Chris Brady, District 7. Please join Dr. Hargens in a group photograph.
Make sure it's not upside down.
Oh, good point.
Thank you and congratulations. Now please join me in viewing a video presentation of District 2 schools.
We're in Field Elementary. I think the most fun part about this is getting to come every morning before school and work with all the computers.
School's becoming exciting again.
It's fun.
Tell us what it is like to be at Goldsmith Elementary.
First of all, you learn a lot, and then it's fun.
Hawthorne Elementary is immersing their students in education in a spectacular way with their Spanish immersion program.
Mi escuela es muy buena. Los maestros están muy buenos también porque pueden enseñar mucho español.
We are at Barrett Traditional Middle School, and it's kind of like field day.
Hashtag all in, that's our slogan for the year, so we're just working together doing exercise.
Here at Highland Middle School, we are launching our first annual Career Day themed Love Your Job.
People from different careers are coming to our school to show us about what we'll do in the real life when we get older.
We are at Atherton High School today to celebrate Farm to School Week.
We're making chicken quinoa burritos with cheese, esquites de elotes, which is the Mexican corn salad, and we're also making jicama slaw.
Today we're at Seneca High School, and we're about to have our FFA pep rally. We have a little contest called Kiss and Tail, but this year we have a lot more animals: a chicken, sheep, cow, rabbit, and a pig.
Here at Wagner, we are preparing our students to be the next generation healthcare leaders in our community. We offer courses ranging from nursing to pharmacy to biomedical engineering. And if you're a student who is eager to learn about health and medicine, then Wagner is the place for you.
We are JCPS!
Dr. Hargens and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. First of all, I also want to congratulate and thank the students as well as the parents of those students, and also to extend another thank you, which I'll say again, to Field Elementary for hosting us. Presentations were fantastic, and to you parents, thank you for supporting your students as well as our schools. Before I do want to recognize a couple folks that are in the room. I'd like to recognize a couple of our public officials. 41st State Representative Attica Scott, if you would, please stand. Thank you. And also District 9 Metro Councilman Bill Hollander. So thank you once again. Thank you again for coming out tonight. We really appreciate your support as well. I hope I'm not missing anyone. So, okay, good. So that hope is, I didn't mess up on that one. So at this time, it's our tradition and practice to have a, we'll say, 3-minute break. And that will allow our students and our parents to leave at this time so they can go home and do homework as well as other things. And so we appreciate that. So we may not need that long of a break, but we'll take a 1-minute break nonetheless. So we'll be back in about a minute, and if anybody who wants to stick around, we'll still be here. Thank you. I'll be right back.
It'll be wonderful. It probably did, but I'm not sure. I think it's in celebration of the Chinese New Year.
All right, so we're going to come back into session. So again, thank you for everyone for coming out here to Field Elementary. At this point, I'd like to take have a motion made to receive tonight's recognitions. Motion made by Member Gies. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Kolb. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? In favor or opposed?
You want to be in favor.
Recognitions. Approval of recognitions. In favor. Okay, so we're unanimous in favor of that. All right, so now we're going to move on to our next item. Our next item is the approval of the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Member Gies?
Chairman Brady, I'd like to move to amend the agenda to take item 12, the hearing from our public visitors, to immediately preceding the message from our superintendent.
Okay, so that will be after approval of minutes. Okay, so and just to let my colleagues know that there are two speakers tonight, one of which is a student. So is there a, that was a motion. Is there a second? We'll say Member Horn. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. All right, so we will make that recommendation or that adjustment. So now we still need a motion to approve the amended agenda. Is there a motion?
I actually one more motion. I would like to remove the policies pertaining to the board meeting agenda and the public speakers until we have a policy committee in place that can vet that to ensure the best public input.
Point of discussion on that, just prior to this meeting, one of the things that we talked about was a board organizational meeting, and we're discussing how to bring back our board committees, and one of those committees would be a policy committee, so there's a number of policies that are on tonight's agenda. Those policies are now going to go through that committee for vetting, and that is what our Vice Chair Wilner's motion is for. I just want to provide some context for those of you who are at home or watching this on the telecast. So the motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Member Duncan. All those in favor? All opposed? And the motion passes unanimously. Okay. So and I still need a motion for the amended agenda, which is going to be removing item R and also moving the speakers up to after the approval of minutes. Is there a motion for that? Motion made by Vice Chair Wilner, second by Member Horn. All those in favor? All opposed? And motion passes unanimously. All right, so now moving on to our next item of business will be the approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a motion? Motion made by Member Porter. Is there a second? By Member Duncan. All those in favor? All opposed? And motion passes unanimously. At this time, we are going to our amended agenda. So we are going to move our public speakers up at this point. As I said, there are two of them. The two speakers for tonight will be Kendall Nash regarding sex education and Maya Mercer, a student regarding school nutrition. Will Kendall Nash make their way up here to the table? Is Kendall Nash here? Kendall Nash once, Kendall Nash twice. She's in overflow room, so she's on the way over here. All right. So what I want to do is I want to reverse this. I'm going to let Maya Mercer go first. So is Ms. Mercer here? Ms. Mercer, if you would come on forward. While you're on you're making your way up here, let me take a moment and go through our board policy regarding our speakers. Any person or persons wishing to speak or to present a matter to the board shall register with the secretary of the board prior to the meeting. The subject of the presentation shall be stated at that time. Materials intended for consideration by the board may be left with the secretary at the time of registration. If speakers have materials to present to the board at this meeting, then those materials are to be given to our secretary for distribution to the board, and that is to my right, your left, Ms. Gilpin. Presentation shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will hear a bell at the 2.5-minute mark and 2 bells once time has elapsed. The board shall reserve the right to limit, extend, or terminate discussion on any subject. Undue interruption or interference with the orderly conduct of board business cannot be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. The chairperson may terminate the speaker's participation if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks, and that's mainly by naming staff in your remarks. So, with that being said, are you...
I'm the
Kendall. Okay, so the first one to show up here. Okay, so we'll go with that. So, as I said, the first speaker will be Kendall Nash regarding sex education.
Hello, my name is Kendall Nash. I'm a parent of a 13-year-old boy at Bezique Middle School. I'm also a longtime advocate for children. My entire professional career has been spent working on issues that affect children. Safe and affordable housing with the Metropolitan Housing Coalition, economic justice with women in transition, and most recently, child abuse prevention with the Exploited Children's Help Organization, Kentucky Youth Advocates, and the Face It campaign. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I feel very strongly that JCPS should incorporate an age-appropriate, comprehensive sex education curriculums in its schools for 2 main reasons. My peers, both personally as a JCPS parent and professionally as a child advocate, want comprehensive sexual education for our collective children and the long-term positive economic and social impacts that this curriculum can have on each child, their families, and our entire community. I know firsthand from my family and professional experience the positive social impacts that can come from students receiving comprehensive sex ed and the negative consequences of withholding facts about sexual education from students. Using medically accurate names for body parts will help the sexual abuse survivor know the words to use when he discloses. Learning how to protect oneself from STIs will keep a young body healthy. Understanding how to avoid an unplanned pregnancy will keep 2 young folks from having to choose between school or jobs. And knowing how to appropriately communicate consent, that benefits all of us. Parents need and want JCPS's assistance in combating the negative or misleading images and ideas about sex that our children are bombarded with since we've entered the information age. Not every child will use the quadratic formula when they grow older, but every child will always have a body that belongs to them and is their responsibility. Louisville's kids deserve to have an accurate information about their bodies and the risks as well as responsibilities of sexual behaviors. At the very least, it is our job as the adults in the community and your jobs as the elected representatives of our school districts to provide comprehensive sexual education curriculum in a safe academic environment. We have over 5,000 signatures of Louisville residents, parents, current and former students, and teachers, all of whom support these guidelines, and all of whom are or will be voters. Because of these lifelong benefits that comprehensive sex ed brings to our kids, it is a direct fit into JCPS's 2020 vision goal of deeper learning. Deeper learning, according to JCPS, includes helping students master the development of capacities and dispositions necessary for success in life. Research shows that well-designed and well-implemented sex education programs can decrease sexual risk behaviors among teens, including delaying sexual intercourse and decreasing the frequency of unprotected sex, all variables that can be used to measure capacities and dispositions necessary for success in life. I cannot think of a more impactful school policy than comprehensive sex ed for children at JCPS, their families, and the community at large. It's a community-supported policy that is long past due, and I ask you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nash. Next up. All right. Next up is Maya, I hope I'm getting it, Mia, I'm sorry. Mia Mercer, a student, and she would like to speak to us about school nutrition. Ms. Mercer.
Hi, I'm Mia Mercer. I'm an 8th grader at Mazik Middle, and I'll be entering DuPont Manual's MST program in the fall. Thank you for allowing me to share my ideas. Tonight, I come here as a fellow visionary, fully supporting Vision 2020. I present you Meatless Mondays, a day in which the entire district would not be served meat in school-provided lunches. This concept would ensure the focus areas of Vision 2020 are fully met and accentuate the core values. The first core value of Vision 2020 is caring, and I urge you to nurture the students with healthy, meat-free lunches on Mondays. My pediatrician said that removing processed foods, like a lot of meat in school lunches, is highly beneficial to a healthy lifestyle and may help lower the skyrocketing rates of childhood diabetes and obesity. Also, since the Jefferson County Public Schools have roughly 64,000 students that eat school-provided lunch, abstaining from meat just one day a week would do wonders for the environment. It would be the statistical equivalent to removing over 2,000 cars off the road. As a responsible citizens of our community, this is the right thing to do. We can transform students into worldly global citizens by providing an ethnic meal on Meatless Mondays as well. Many cultures from around the world don't consume animal products for religious to convenience purposes, yet provide delicious and nutritious meals. We can embrace Jefferson County's unique diversity, like one of Vision 2020's core values states, and expose all of the students to the world's varying cultures. Another awesome thing that Meatless Monday would do is it will save the district a lot of money. Vegetarians save, on average, 27% more money than meat eaters. This means that we could save approximately 5.4% of the nutrition budget, which will add up to a lot over time. We could use this money to buy more classroom technology like iPads, or to purchase more local, organic, wholesome foods that may cost a little bit more. Integrating Meatless Monday into different schools over the course of the next few years would be simple and smooth if we aim for a 100% participation rate by 2020. Starting in high schools, then entering elementary and middle schools, we could seamlessly adjust to the new processes. I encourage you to take action on your words and nurture the students with healthier, meat-free meals, expand their cultural knowledge, and save the district money by implementing the Meatless Monday policy. This will not only benefit JCPS, but the entire Louisville community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Okay, let me go back to our agenda. At this time, I would like to, or the next item up to discuss will be the superintendent's report. So at this point, I turn it over to Dr. Hargens.
Thank you, Chair Brady and members of the board, and thank you for the opportunity to present the superintendent's report. It is always a pleasure to be at the center of the universe, a school with students who are the reason for our existence. The students are truly our measure of success. An important part of off-site meetings are demonstrations of students' learning going on in the district. Vision 2020 calls for project and performance-based assessments. This is a true opportunity for students to present to an audience. So thank you. And I have to say, I see Vision 2020 every day, and I heard our speakers relate their comments to Vision 2020. So I appreciate that. I want to thank Dr. Kolb and District 2 for hosting the meeting. I know it was no small feat on meeting number 2. Thank you, Dr. Kolb. And thanks to Principal Rivera and her team here for opening Field Elementary up to us. You have been very generous with your hospitality. A special thanks always to Terry Robinson for coordinating all these details. And thanks to the operations staff for coordinating the logistics. And again, to Julia Bauscher and her team for the wonderful dinner. Thank you. The board's dashboard, which I present at every meeting, provides information on staff and student attendance, staff vacancies, and referrals and suspensions. The whole purpose of this is time spent on learning is critical to the success of our students. So here's the dashboard currently. So what you can see is that student average daily attendance is trending about the same as last year. This is student attendance. Staff average daily attendance is trending about the same as last year. And then you can see our total behavior occurrences are up, and I'm going to talk about that in a later slide. So if you go back to the dashboard, attendance is trending the same, but what you see is an increase in behavior incidences and total suspensions. So there's both an increase in incidents and suspensions. But if you go deeper, the percentage of events resulting in suspension is actually 10% down from last year, which was 12%. So we are in the process of analyzing this further because we are seeing that it's really because in some cases of progressive discipline being documented, or is it really that there are more minor infractions? So we will begin again to give the board a picture at the student level about the referrals and incidences of suspension. But I thought it would be helpful to kind of give you in elementary, middle, and high what the top 3 events or incidents are and the top 3 resolutions, which are contained in that chart. So on the elementary, it's failure to respond, horseplay, and fighting. On middle, the top 3 events are failure to respond, horseplay, and fighting. On high school, it's failure to respond, unexcused tardiness, and non-attendance to class. So the resolutions or the interventions for resolving those incidents. On the elementary level, our student conferences, phone calls, and parent guardian conferences. On the middle school level, it's student conferences, ISAP, which is in-school suspension for a partial day, or out-of-school suspension. On the high school level, it's in-school suspension for a partial day, student conference, and detention. So again, the board has the ability actually to go deeper. And we know that time with staff is important as well. So we want maximum amount of time with our students and our staff. So every board meeting, we show you the vacancies that we currently have. So you can see that resignations and retirements and transfers, but you see also that we're down to the positions that have been vacant all year, those hard to fill position, it's really down to 2.5, or a total right now of 73 vacancies. Louisville Linked, remember, is our system that really links supports with student needs and provides what I always call the insulation around the academic pipeline. I know it's hard to see, but in this latest report, 45,148 links were made through the 5th pupil month, serving 153 schools and 17,886 students. Last week, Cabinet held our 6th Listen and Learn session, and that was at No Middle School. We have been at Western High School, Phoenix School of Discovery, Brown School, Minor Daniels Academy, and Alex Kennedy Elementary School. So I wanted to show you what these sessions look like.
Hi, welcome to No Middle School. I'm Jennifer Cave, the proud principal of No Middle, and today at our faculty meeting we are hosting Dr. Hargens and the Cabinet for a Listen and Learn event.
So if you added up all of that experience, which I did not do much, that's an incredible amount of expertise.
What kind of things could a central office be doing so schools could be more focused on what schools do?
We're hoping to have opportunities for the Cabinet to share with us some of their strengths and areas of growth, and have an opportunity for us to have conversation about where they're going from here.
But for sure, with language arts, I feel like they solicit our input, and you see, it's not that you just give your input and they're like, okay, thanks, but things change.
Because we have such a diverse population on every team. And not just populations, but interest groups as well.
Oh, we're also deaf and hard of hearing as well.
All right.
The staff here is fantastic. They go above and beyond for our students every day. They are professionals in every sense of the word, always looking to be lifelong learners and bring innovative ideas to the classroom.
So again, we really appreciate the schools that have hosted us, and they were randomly selected for the opportunity to sit down face-to-face and learn about how we can better support our schools. So Vision 2020 conversations are in motion as well. Those are conversations I have with principals and with small groups of other employees to talk about what Vision 2020 looks like and sounds like and feels like. I'm always inspired when I meet with our employees about their passion and the work that they're doing. So we're going back to the PowerPoint. We're not going back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so I want to thank the EQUOC, which is the Educator Quality Oversight Committee, for beginning to formulate the plans for a learning summit to build capacity to better support our students. The dates are set. June 6th, 7th, and 8th. And remember, the second focus area of Vision 2020 is building capacity with our staff. So this really was an amazing weekend, and maybe, yep, we are actually going to see how amazing that weekend was. So these are actually sessions where Vision 2020 conversations and groups of employees. So I wanted to see you have you see groups of employees. So Board Member Geese, it was a pleasure to be with Board Member Geese at a community conversation for his district with the principals in his area at the Southwest Regional Library. Then Ms. Porter and I attended a showing of Hidden Figures with a group of our students and community leaders. That was an amazing experience. And Saturday night, I was immersed in science and activities at the Kentucky Science Center. The theme for the evening was Ascend. On Sunday night, I was part of a panel at the University of Louisville College of Arts and Sciences Yearlings Club Forum with the Honorable Hal Heiner, Secretary of Education, Mr. Brent McKim, the president of JCTA, Dr. James Calaros White, the head of School of Collegiate, Dr. Wayne Lewis, executive director of educational programs in Hal Heiner's office, and State Senator Gerald Neal. The moderator was Jerquil Campbell, who's a doctoral student, and the topic was very important, putting students first and creating a community of learners. I want to congratulate Chief Equity Officer John Marshall, who was invited to serve as the keynote speaker for the Benjamin L. Hooks Institute for Social Change at the University of Memphis on the African American Male Achievement in April of 2017. And we're proud again to recognize the 7 Jefferson County Board of Education members as an official part of National School Board Recognition Month. Thank each of you for your service. Chair Brady, I'm recommending for approval the consent agenda later in the meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Hargens. All right, next item up on our agenda is action items, of which there are 4. The first action item is to review an examination of the general fund draft budget for fiscal year 2017-18. So at this time, I'm going to invite Cordelia Harden and Tom Hudson to come up and present this item. Oh, and John Colopy.
Good evening, everyone. And this is how's that? Any better? Okay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us. We're here to talk about the draft budget, which you saw at the work session at the last board meeting. We're, as you know, talking about a revenue budget of $1.2 billion. And when you subtract the expenses and the other things that we have to take care of, we're down to a net available of $14.7 million that we'll have to work with between now and the time we put the tentative budget in place. As you know, when you approve this budget, if you do, that will be approximately $400 million that will be allocated to the schools via the allocation model that you're familiar with. It is irrevocable, so once we pull the trigger, it's done. And between now and the tentative budget, which will happen over the next couple of months, we'll be working to figure out how we balance out with add-on budgets and other mechanisms to make sure that we're fair to all students and that people are taken care of appropriately. That's it.
Are there any discussion issues or any questions from the board? Member Porter.
I understand that we're in step 2 of the budget. Is that correct? We have 2 other opportunities that you all will work on it. We're at the point now where this has to go to the state, but it's not a final. Is that correct? Would you explain where we are in the process, please?
Yes. Let me be very explicit about that. So between now and February 2nd, John will be working and will distribute the money out via the allocation model. And then following that, the budget request will be due back into and reviewed by the cabinet on March 9th. And then we'll be back with recommendations to the board on March 21st. And we'll have until May to make the final decisions. You'll have until May to make the final decisions about how you want the budget to be distributed. So
Couple
again,
of things.
draft budget, tentative budget, and then the working budget that'll come in September after the 5-day count.
A couple of things that I've said earlier is I think it's important to hear the voice of the community and our students as we talk about our budgeting, and as we move forward. I hope that we have more of an opportunity to hear from others. And at the last work session, I talked about a weighted budget based on the population that each school serves, and you explained to me that the allocation goes to the schools, and schools can request additional funding for things that they need in their building. But I would like for us at some point to have a serious conversation about a budget that's developed for the school, specifically for the population that they serve, because are we in fact doing that? I understand that principals can make a request which can either be approved or denied, but I have a real concern about some of our schools, particularly I'll speak to the 10 elementary schools in my district that are over the diversity index and have 95% plus free and reduced lunch. And in a previous meeting, I asked that conversations be held with those schools and we be told specifically what they may need. And at this point, I'm not exactly sure what they may need. But if we are, in fact, in the business of educating our children, I am concerned that the money goes where the children need the money. And it's extremely important to me, so I would like to have more conversation about that. I also would like to look at our strategic plan, and if you could put in the strategic plan where the dollars are going for the strategies, because all the things in the strategic plan are what we are working toward, and we should be able to put or document where the dollars are going as it relates to the strategic plan, or else we are not doing what we say we want to do in writing. So those are some of the concerns that I have. because I do not think that we are giving all the schools everything that they need, and our principals are held accountable. And I think that it's my responsibility, the board's responsibility, to see that the schools get the resources that they need for the population that they serve. No two schools exactly alike, but we should put the money and the resources and the people to the students if we are truly concerned about student academic success. That's all I'd like to say, but I would like to see the strategic plan with dollars and cents on it so we know where the money's going. And I would like more conversation about a weighted budget for the schools. And I would like, as we move forward, all of this can't get done by the timeline that you talked about, but more opportunities for the community and students to say what they need. I've looked at 2 different districts, and the student has a voice. And we have students in schools that can talk to us about what they see and what they don't see. At the facilities meeting that was hosted at Central High School, a student was very clear about his concerns about marketing his school based on the facilities in that particular building. So I think we deserve to hear the student voice also. That's all of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Duncan, or before
May
I'd give the administration a chance to respond.
Well, 3 things, I guess. First is we agree with you completely. Number 2, in terms of your principals are working with the assistant superintendents and doing their best to represent.
We can't hear. They can't hear in the back.
If you can pull the mic closer.
Yeah, I've got to eat this thing, I think.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say was we agree with what you're saying, Ms. Porter. There's no disagreement here. The second thing is that your principals and the assistant principals are working diligently to put together individual school budgets that make sense for those populations. And thirdly, John and Boyan have both been working to put together the model to evaluate those budget requests, and they all tie back to Vision 2020. I guarantee you, nothing knowingly is going to something that's not consistent with Vision 2020.
I appreciate your response, and I appreciate every year that you come before us with your presentation. It's always very well done. But one thing that you say that I think that we are talking about is the budget is a collective process, and I would like to hear the voices of instruction and others in our district that sit at the cabinet level to talk about a conversation about how our money is in fact going to our schools to educate our students. I just think that as a board member, we deserve to know that that is in fact going on, because I could sit here and draw up a budget, but it would not be meaningful. It's about educating our children and giving them everything they need to be educated. So I appreciate your response. Thank you.
And I would add one more thing, is that the program that we have with the district management consulting, so looking at 20 different schools, that is exactly what's going on in the schools, or will be going on in the schools, with principals and leadership teams and teachers working in individual schools. And as we pointed out at the last working session, what we're attempting to derive are some budget templates that are more reflective of what's going on, so we don't have to have this one-size-fits-all approach that none of us like.
Understand the pilot project. I also will speak to the 10 elementary schools in my district that are out of the diversity index and how we are meeting the needs of those 10 elementary schools. And there are probably other schools. I don't want to say that's only my district. This is a school district of 100,000 students, and I just want us to be attentive to what we need to do if we are here to educate students. Not, I just think it's time that we have a more serious conversation and that we do what we say. We can sit here and talk about it all the time, but until we start putting the money in the schools and we see better growth and development of our students, that's what I'm going to speak to. So, because that's why I was elected. So thank you.
Thank you.
Member Duncan.
Well, related to that request, or that, I'd like to make a request. It's not just where the money is going, but I would like for you to be able to show us when that money does go to a non-title school, or the Title I money stays at home with the child, or when we send it or don't send it to a non-Title I school. Can you show us the impact that that money is having when we hold it for our Title I kids and don't send it out? That's one of the things that I think we've talked about many times, is we're our concern that the money does not follow those kids out and their needs. And I'd like to see the impact of not following the money out with it. I mean, the scores should be showing us something by your free reduced lunch population. So I would appreciate if there's some way that you all can show us the impact of that money.
We will do our best to do so, and it's a process that I don't particularly care for. It's not a scalpel as it should be. It's more of an axe, and as a colloquialism of the way of explaining it, it's not a good process. We'll work with Dr. Dossett to make sure that we tie together student outcomes with those results to give you some feedback to try and correlate the two.
Thank you.
Member Cole?
So as I said earlier, I've been on the board for 22 days, so forgive me if I'm repeating something that you all have been over for a while, or there's any kind of mistaken assumptions in what I'm saying. Our strategic plan is excellence with equity, and I just wanted to note that in the draft budget that we have, and I know there's other equity initiatives in different units, but the equity is, you know, $3.4 million, which is about 0.2% of the overall budget. And, you know, in whatever ways we can, and I think this goes with what Diane is saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, and then also, I know we're going to talk about allocation standards in a minute, but, you know, is that another case where one size fits all? You know, it's 140 for a student, no matter, you know, where they come from, what neighborhood they're from, what kind of school they're going to, what's going on in their lives. You know, some students come in with more challenges and are just need a little bit more intensive support to educate them, which is, of course, our goal. So I'd like us to think about every way that we can to get students that have more barriers to success the resources that they need, including, you know, looking at some things that we've taken for granted in terms of how money gets allocated and things of that nature.
Is that okay? So I'm unclear, and hopefully further, John, to the 3.4.
As far as the allocation, the 120 or the 130, 140, that is what's called Section 6. There's a formula for it, and the state requires that we provide 3.5% of the SEEK base per pupil, which equates to $140. However, for the past 4 to 6 years, the state legislators, because of budgets, have said $100 is all that a district is required to do. Until this current year, we had always provided everyone for the past many years $140 per student. As part of our cost cutting and looking at schools as well as central office, that is one area that we did look at, and in some cases it was $120 dependent upon the size of the school, $130 or $140. Regarding the $3.5 million on diversity, I believe you're probably speaking of the allocation for central office, possibly in that department?
Yes,
Okay.
it's on the bottom of page 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is not all of the funds that are distributed. That handles as far as the staffing and other costs that are occurring. In addition, we have the Area 5 Area Superintendent, Dr. Seitz, handles our behavior. This board last year put aside $5 million for behavior, which also dealt with some of the equity issues that we have in order to try to address that gap. In addition, we have what we call Section 7, and that is about $4 million, a little over $4 million, that we target towards gapped students, that schools put forth an application, and those allocations are then provided to them in order to handle either interventions, and it depends upon the school, what specific need the school has as to how they use those funds. And along with not just the allocations that we give that at this point are very formula driven, but in addition, we have what's called add-ons, and those add-ons are for the specific needs of a school, what program they may have. It also provides for the exceptional child education. So if there's child with particular needs, then we're giving teachers for that, as well as some coaches and those types of things. There's many additional add-ons that we provide the schools in addition to the actual allocation formula.
All of which you'll see over the next few weeks and months.
Vice Chair Wilner.
So the conversation about differentially, funding schools based on the population served, I just want to add my voice to that particular bandwagon. I think that's critically important. And as you're going to be reviewing budget requests, I know that's the next stage. Last year, we were provided a document that was put together by Tom and Cordelia and also Dina about what we learned from, what can we learn from the 2016-17 budget requests and approvals. And I would love for that to come to all board members since we've got a couple of new people on the board. There were a lot of really important lessons in there. There was a chart that was on page 12 of that document, and it was the bubbles, and it shows which budget requests were approved and which were not approved. And as the management team pointed out, there was not a lot of rhyme or reason as to what approved in terms of its alignment or the program efficacy in terms of supporting students and student growth and achievement. So I just want to say that this board member, and I hope others, are in agreement that I want to be really clear that as those budget requests are presented to you, that they are reviewed for alignment with the strategic plan and also with high ratings from the program evaluation department that we're not continuing to fund programs that have not been effective. And then, and I know I'm getting ahead, I know but the budget, that's going to be coming up, right? So the other thing, when we got to the working budget last year, I ended up voting against it. We had such a narrow focus on compensation, and we weren't talking about how we were funding programs. We were not necessarily looking at which programs are supporting students and which aren't, and where are we continuing to put dollars where maybe it's not so effective. And I know at the time you said that's in the works and it's already, so I know that, and I appreciate that that work is happening. I think it would be really helpful for this board to get some in writing indication, a report of where we are with those evaluations, which programs are not supporting students, and maybe we've invested in them for a long time, and so it's just sort of habit. Of course, we're going to keep funding that, but if it's not helping students, I think we should have that information so that those resources can be deployed to support programs that have proven effectiveness.
I'd just add one thing. We know of no programs that aren't supporting kids. If we knew of them, they would stop. So to the extent that there may not be data to make an argument one way or another, we may, but that process is in the works. But I just want to emphasize there is nothing that I know of today that is not working that we're allowing to go forward.
Thank you.
Member Gies?
I would just like to echo the same sentiment of Member Wilner, especially regarding some of the special programs that our school district funds, and ensuring that we have the appropriate data to make a judgment on whether or not particular programs should advance, whereas other programs should not advance. And if we don't have data on those programs, we need to start collecting them.
Oh, I guarantee you, Sue, we are. The programs that are in the works and program evaluation that John and Bo and others have spent a lot of time on, and Dina's shop, there's a lot of data and effort in those. There are other programs such as Title VII, such as the ECE program, that are huge programs that we have a challenging time evaluating those individually because they're so spread out. But we all sit here and know that we need to do a great job with the ECE community. We need to do a great job in what you're talking about earlier about how we distribute Section 7 money and Section 6 money. So that to the extent that we have the data, we really are conscientious about that.
So all board members will be receiving a report that will tell us how successful these programs are or not?
Yes, and in fact, when we did the program, just before you started, there was a lot of the data in that presentation, and that will be updated and brought back to you again.
Okay, thank you.
Member Horn.
I think that this is the reason, why I hope we can get together a community advisory team to be able to just keep our eye on this so that programs aren't evaluated, every program is not evaluated every year. So there's like a cycle for them. And so if we can get the cycle and that can be known as a part of that process, the salary study also is just kind of looming out there in the community. And I just I wondered about that, because we're hearing there's like, 50 million, in it. And then when I got a copy of the salary study, it looked like there were like 7,500 jobs that are classroom teacher jobs. But that 7,500 people equating to 60 million, is that true? I mean, you're saying that every program is tied to, in the budget, to something that is working, that we've already stopped doing things we shouldn't be doing programmatic-wise. But what about this 60 million?
Well, this is the challenging subject, and because it's embedded in most, and I'm now talking about non-teacher jobs, so let's just be clear about that, so we don't go down that path. But what you've had, as you know, since 1979, a system that wasn't evaluated for a number of years, and those jobs through seniority and the step system that we have in COLAs have advanced over time. So you have that $60 million is embedded over 12,000 people, or whatever that proper number is. So there's not some jar in John's office that we can go that has $60 million of it that we pull off the shelf and put out into the system and everybody's happy. This is the most challenging issue we have, is how do we treat people fairly that are here and grew to live to a set of expectations that is the salary structure that we have today, and how do we transition to something new and contemporary that's fair for everybody in the process.
And so like right now, the budget, is it going to change to reflect work of the Finance Committee's work would include obviously this component, in it, so that the budget could be morphing in some respects this year by the time it gets to the third draft? Yes,
it will, but understand that as this takes place, if we do it in a way that's fair to everybody, and this is a program that'll take 4, 5, and 6 years for what I would say are the two tiers to come back together, and part of that will be driven by how fast inflation grows. So as inflation grows, that gap will narrow in a quicker fashion than otherwise.
And then there's new programs and there's old programs. There were, in the report that we received in the summer, I did the report I sent to these two just so you guys could have it. It had identified, obviously the new programs are all tied to a program review cycle. The 87 programs that it mentioned that were like the older programs, is that the report we're going to get like over time on those 87 programs, the program reviews of those, they're going to be provided to the board? Is that what you all are discussing in this conversation?
What's happening is John and Bo are working to have people for legacy programs, if you will, that didn't go through the cycle. We're being asked to evaluate those and come up with a criteria that would be effective in measuring their success as if they were starting today, even though they may have been in place for 10 years.
And then, in conclusion, I always feel that this budget has to be a reflection of my values. A budget, it is a values document, and I still, in it, am really, really concerned about the lack of support for our district for arts and music instruction. It irks me as we take money, away from schools based on just the size of a middle school determines how much you get per pupil. Just the size of a middle school. It doesn't have anything to do with the needs of the child that's at that middle school. So there are like a couple issues flowing through what has been raised here today, that issue, the issue with arts education. The allocation, just the allocation, I guess I'll say there's like a blindfold on our use of data, using our study for optimal capacity, really had to be raised by this board member when we were starting to receive information about all of this budget information. They were still going back to program capacity. We're going to do some little study on what schools were over program capacity when we had just done this massive one-year project to look at every single school and get an optimal capacity. So, and so that forming the basis of what we're doing today, looking at schools, it just adds up. These things add up to something that at this point, again, I find it really hard to support continuing to allocate so many children, to schools. Middle schools are 57% like over optimal capacity, like all our schools. It just irks me. So at this point, I can't support it. I really am going to try to work really hard to help make the change. I'm really encouraged by the people we're getting involved to help us. And Cordelia's there's nothing wrong with the budget. It's just flipping it on its end to actually serve students. So I'll just basically punt to Diane Porter, the wiseness of her first words. It's just got to serve students better. It's not that we're doing anything wrong. It just has to, serve students. Thank you.
Any other concerns or comments? I have 3 points. First of all, I want to say I'm encouraged to know that there's going to be more surrounding program review. I know that during our meeting last year at Lincoln, that report was given to us that Vice Chair Wilner was referring to, and I know that there was a line in there that said, adequate program review really was lacking or hadn't really been done. So I'm glad to know that we're going to be looking at that and looking at our older programs because, I was in a conversation with one of our state representatives recently, and we didn't agree on a whole lot, but one thing that he did make a mention of, it seems that there's a lot of things that we're doing. And I think in particular, program review is something that will certainly help us be able to simplify and focus our efforts in this district. And simplifying and focus in and of itself can be a cost saver, a cost savings. So I'm encouraged that that's going to be forthcoming, and I look forward to hearing more about that. I do have a concern about, one overarching concern and then another more targeted concern. Our overarching concern is last meeting, we had a presentation given by our COO regarding facilities. And we also had, obviously, the work session preceding that presentation. And obviously, we have a lot of needs that are outstanding regarding infrastructure. And the concern I have is that sometimes it seems like that these items are being siloed. I don't see a whole lot of, cross-integration in regards to the needs that are being presented to us are really almost critical needs regarding infrastructure and what we're trying to do budget-wise to be able to address that. And I realize there's only so much that's only so far you can stretch the dollar. I understand that. But sometimes, like in regards to the draft budget, there's a lot of talk about allocations, as there should be, because I know that's the primary, engine on this. But I don't see a lot of other things that are addressing the almost hair on fire issues that are being presented by, regarding our facilities. So if you might be able to speak to that for a moment, and then get back to my more
I'm
targeted
speaking
issue.
for Dr. Razor, and he can throw something at me at the, I'm sure he's behind me someplace.
He's right behind you.
He's lurking. Yeah. So what I would say is that's the whole purpose of the facility study that Dr. Razor's going to do, is to pull that together in a comprehensive way and a bold way, which we need to do. And then once we have those, the community, to a lot of people up tonight talking about getting the community involvement going so that we can get a community consensus about what facilities we need and what facilities we don't need. Once we have that, then we can get clever about how we go out and find the money to fund what we need to do. I think that's a fair answer.
And if I could just add, the draft budget concentrates really solely on the general fund. Within the general fund, there is an allocation for facilities, the small things that need to be done in schools. But in addition, by statute, in order to participate in the facilities program through the state, we have to set aside a nickel, equivalent nickel, of our property tax revenues. That equates to about $34 million every year. That is put into a different fund. It's called the building fund, which is different than the general fund. Those 34 million plus the 8 million of capital outlay also goes. That's $100 per ADA on student attendance. So those dollars are used to pay the debt that we already have on our bond issues, plus any additional projects that we may do. In some cases, it's cash. We use that cash if it's there, or we sell bond issues. Right now, we have approximately, and it depends upon the interest rate as to how much bonding capacity we have. Right now, we have close to $200 million that we could actually go out and bond. Just like if you were to buy a home, you have a certain credit line. So that's basically what we have as a district to be able to fund those projects that come from that long-range facility plan, that when Dr. Razor and the community decide these are the priorities, then that funding is what takes care of it. In addition, as Tom was saying, we're going to see what we can also do outside that in order to help provide more funding, because this district does have a lot of needs just because of the size of the district we are.
Okay. My last more targeted concern would be the presentation that was uploaded to the portal is, again, different than what there was on the work session, and I did send you some information, some contact regarding some of the numbers that are presented. And I understand that there's been some changes within the organization. So the numbers that we had seen, or that were presented to us last year in our draft budget, and I'm looking at actual numbers for the 2014-15 timeframes, that those actual numbers are different. And a lot of that is, some of that is because of the structural changes that have taken place over the last year. I will mention that when you're looking at the school allocations or the school individual actual versus, just actual numbers compared to, you would think that 14 would still be static and 15 would still be static, but many times they're not. And I still have an outstanding question on that. If you need to do some research, that's fine on that. You can come back to me later. But I understand the structural side of it, but on the school side, there seems to be something that is, at least not every school, but a good deal of many schools, there's the difference between what was presented as actual budget to us last year versus what I'm seeing it for the same time frame.
Yes, and you are correct. And I have looked into that, and it should not be significant on any particular school, but what has occurred, what we provided last year. Within the Munis system, there's different ways that reports can be pulled. When we pulled the information for the draft budget actuals last year, we usually are dealing with active accounts when we're dealing with the budget. So therefore, when we pulled the actual numbers, we pulled only active accounts. But we have a lot of accounts that are also closed. Now, when we present the tentative budget, we pull everything, we balance to our annual financial report, which has all accounts in it for historical purposes, as well as the current year. So the difference between what you saw last year and this year on schools would be because we pulled all accounts for this time, and which is what we're going to do from this point forward, because that's really the appropriate way to do, and that way there's consistency. That is what the expenses were when you include inactive accounts as well as active accounts. But in that previous year, we only included active accounts.
Okay, because I'm more talking about time frame that's 2 years old, like 2014-15.
And it when you pull Munis, we pull all of that. It comes, all those years come in at the same time. So it impacted those previous years too, where we may have had an active account in 2014 that's not active now. So when we pulled the numbers, it would have been dropped off of 2014. But now that we've brought it back in, it's in the full account.
Okay.
And I have a recap by school if that will help.
Just from my own standpoint, it makes it very difficult for me to do my due diligence when I'm looking at numbers that are moving.
Absolutely, and that's why we will make sure we are consistent in how we report this. Again, when the tentative budget is, which is the budget that has the details, that is much more detailed, consistent. We tie it to the annual financial report, which is the actual numbers, and the only time that would change would be if we had a prior year adjustment, which sometimes happens in the auditing process, but that's not very often that that happens.
Okay. Are there any other, Member Porter?
I have a quick question, and in asking that the dollars be put to the strategic plan so that we know exactly where they're going, former board member Chuck Hadaway and I have always talked about the CARDS program. So will I see those dollars in the strategic plan? Will that be in there somewhere? Because one of the concerns that I personally have about opportunities for teachers and students, and we have out-of-school time activities and trying to find the money to make those things available for our students, the professional development opportunities for a program like the CARDS program. Am I asking the right question? Because I know sometimes we sit up here and we say things and you give it to us and I'll say, that's not what I wanted. So I want to be clear. Am I asking the right question? Do you understand what I'm asking for, that the dollars, where the dollars are going as it pertains to students and teachers are? And if I'm not, please tell me the right words to use, because I know I have a sense of what I'm looking for. Do you understand what I'm asking for?
Yes.
I think, well, go ahead.
Yes, we understand. Sometimes we may not present a particular line item program, such as maybe the CARDS, in the detail that we provide you, because we have a lot of programs that have smaller dollars, some larger, and we try to not, I guess, make the report too large. But anything we know and specifically, if you're interested in, we certainly want to make sure we present that to you in detail. But we have details on every program as far as what has been allocated to that particular program. But it could be embedded in a particular department. And so therefore, you wouldn't necessarily see CARDS laid out completely, but yet it could be embedded in the program.
Okay, I appreciate your answer, but I probably will come back to you, not at this table, and say, where is the money? Show me the money.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Just prior to our vote, I just wanted to ask for a very high level, exactly what is it that you're asking us to approve now? And are we, if we vote to approve, that we have reviewed and examined the general fund draft budget, are we approving particular amounts of dollars to particular schools based on the number of students projected to be there next year?
You are. Remember, it's back to the enrollment projections, and then the money gets tied to that. And that does go school by school, and that adds up to around $400 million.
All right. So at this time, I'd like to have a motion, or is there a motion to approve the action item for review and examination of general fund draft budget for fiscal year 2017-18? Is there a motion? Motion by Member Duncan. Is there a second? Second by Member Porter. All those in favor? There are 4 in favor. All those opposed? There are 3 opposed. Motion passes. The next action item up for consideration will be the approval of student enrollment projections for 2017-18. And at this time, I'll turn it over to the superintendent to be able to introduce the item further. I will. I'm going to say right after this one. I'm trying to get to 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's an hour and a half.
Okay, so Dr. Dossett is going to describe what this item is to approve the enrollment projections, which is tied to the next item, which is the allocations of dollar amounts. So Dr. Dossett.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. With me tonight, I have Barbara Dempsey, who's the Director of Student Assignment, as well as Ralph Stevens, who's our demographer. So tonight, we're asking for the board approval of student enrollment projections. Projections are based on a number of factors. We look at birth rates, population changes, student enrollment trend data over a series of years. We also look at how schools currently use their building. We call that program capacity. I think the board received some information on Friday around potential strategies to move towards using optimal capacity and what that would look like. We recognize that if we move towards using optimal capacity, we need to be systemic in that approach. We need to make sure that we collaborate and coordinate our work in that area with the facilities review, with any kind of potential student assignment review, we need to be cognizant of any potential legislation that is coming down the path, as well as, in general, getting community input and listening to stakeholders and students and parents who are in those buildings and what impact that might potentially have on them. So with that, just want to summarize by saying overall our projection for next year is relatively stable. Pre-K 12, we are seeing a decrease in our kindergarten enrollment due to the age change that moved from October to August 1st. We met with all of the elementary principals in December at a principals meeting to walk them through what does that mean school by school. They met in clusters to do that work. So in summary, we're asking for projections to be approved. Those projections will be used as part of the student allocation standards so that schools can begin working on their budgets. And also want to let the board know that when the fifth day comes at next year, there is still an opportunity for those fifth day adjustments to be made, and we do that on a regular annual basis when projection and enrollment come together. So with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Questions or discussion? Member Geese.
Yes, I'd just like to speak to a moment on a very important topic, especially from my teacher's perspective, and that's the topic of class size. Class size absolutely, emphatically makes a difference in the success of students, and it makes a huge difference in the role that our teachers play in the lives of our students every day. As a teacher, I can tell you there is no worse nightmare than walking into an overcrowded room with students tripping over each other, no place to store their materials, and running short in copies every day due to a continuously fluctuating amount of students in each room. And so I see here that our ratio for elementary is 24-1, 6th through 8th grade is 28-1, secondary is 28-1. I do see that it does say that it may vary depending upon individual class size. I want to know, based upon your professional opinion, 24-1, 28-1, 28-1, are those realistic class size numbers? Are we looking at a realistic picture of the number of students in every classroom?
And I think the 24, the 28, and 28 are based on the student allocations that the finance department uses. So each spring, our student assignment office works with our schools. They set up classroom rosters that we use then to place students into those classrooms. There are times where we go over the projected amount and go over that class roster, and in those cases, the district will provide overages and resources and support for those cases.
Could you speak to how the class size numbers are currently, right now, this year?
So we can provide that information if you'd like to see by school, by grade, we can give that information to you that lists how many students per classroom.
Right, I'd like to take a look at that. I know that it's been the opinion of some that class sizes do not make a difference. Class sizes do make a difference, and we need to ensure that we keep class sizes reasonable for our teachers and for our students alike.
Yes, and we do have some schools that, at the elementary level, that are practicing what we call small class size, which is on average a 20 to 21 student ratio.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like for us to take those class sizes into account as we're talking about allocations for next year.
Further questions or discussion? Member Duncan?
I just was curious about some of the numbers, the projections that are down. You said early childhood is down by birth rates, but yet our kindergarten projection is up 500 or so. And when you have ECE students, the projection is that number will fall too. And I'm just curious about how we arrived at that. Jefferson County High School cut almost in half over in these projections, and yet we have increasing age requirements where kids have to be in school until they're 18, and we have increasing graduation rates. So it's just, how do you arrive at that Jefferson County High School is projected to drop that much, or that the kindergarten is going to rise when early childhood's dropping?
So I think just a point of clarification with the early childhood, we're actually projecting early childhood to rise. It was a drop this year because that age change impacted early childhood this year. Now that age change will impact kindergarten next year. So next year is when we're projecting a decrease to our kindergarten, but actually early childhood will return back up to around 4,500. Right. So actually early childhood will be increasing because they have gone through that bubble of age change. Jefferson County High School is projected to have about 5 less students than this year than last year. So we're saying it's going to stay relatively the same.
I thought it was 500 and some compared to 200 and some then. Those are the numbers that I saw.
And it might be, E-School might be what is impacting that number. But on average, we anticipate Jefferson County High School to be about the same.
You plan for it to stay the same. Okay. What about newcomer? The information on here said newcomer academy 290. What did that 290 mean?
So that's 290 for the high school level. It's a little bit more for the middle school. So overall, we're projecting them to start the year at 534. This year, they started at 517. So we're projecting them a little bit more than they started last year, or this 16-17. Okay. So when we add the ESL newcomer for high school with the ESL newcomer for middle school, we're looking at 534.
All right. Thank you.
Questions, concerns? Member Horn?
Can you tell us a little bit how this formula leads to like teachers on carts? How does that happen? And how is that happening? That this formula, like it's okay to put kids on stages, classrooms on stages, 2 classrooms on a stage, teachers on carts at multiple schools, mail, it crosses, it's not just in my district. It's all over the district. How does this formula work so that teachers it's okay to put educational capacity somehow different than program capacity? How does this all work?
So currently, or for the past several years, we've been using a program capacity, which is just how the school is using their building right now with their current students. So if they are using teachers that move from classroom to classroom, we account for that in projecting up. It was in March of last year that we received worked on the optimal capacity numbers. But traditionally, we've been using program capacity, which is how schools currently use their building.
And we've just, spent a year going through this, and we're still back to the same budget, to the same figures based on the same formulas that will put teachers on carts and put kids on stages. And it's just really, it just seems like we're on a treadmill and we're just going to keep running on it. I'm going to keep voting no for this. For Crosby, can you give us a little bit of information about what's going on with Crosby, with the enrollment projections that you're showing? Is there going to be something happening? Can you give us a little bit of information about Crosby?
So we are in the exploration process and stage of looking at Crosby's enrollment and making sure that we can provide adequate educational opportunities for students given their space constraints. We have 9 schools that are over the optimal capacity. Crosby is by far the most over, and so we've worked with Principal Kelly and Assistant Superintendent Glenn Beatty to generate some potential options or combination of options for that school. We're working to have a series of meetings with their stakeholders so that we hear from parents and from staff around these different options. We want to hear the advantages, the concerns that they have about the different options, any kind of other questions to consider. So it is possible that we come back at a later point where after we've had some community and faculty input and say, this is the adjustment that we're making for Crosby.
I just want to say that it's taken 2 years with the alternative facts that were originally put out maybe 2 years ago about the capacity of Crosby. So now I'm really glad to see the district, and through a lot of hard work, through a facility study to get to an optimal capacity. I think this will help the entire district, the other 9 schools, So I'm looking forward to seeing a plan so that we're not in the situation that we are with Crosby 2 years later, that we actually can work to develop this plan for these, that we have the will to do it through this facility study. So we're not there yet, but I'm really encouraged that we're getting there and that things are hopefully starting to change.
Just to, for background and context, we have been working with Crosby for a number of years to reduce their enrollment. They were above 1,400. I think they were at 1,464 in 2013-14. They're now around 1,270. So we've moved down 144. It's moved the needle some, not enough. And so now we're at the point where we need to examine more impactful strategies. And that's where, in terms of looking at it system-wide and district-wide, we really need to make sure that we collaborate with our facilities review team, have community input into how to make sure that we look at this systemically across the district.
Because it's just what, Chris, it's just what you said. There's like a disconnect, Ben, between those two things, between facilities and the allocation, that students are going to facilities, like the budget, you know what I mean? So it's like two sides of the same coin. It's really astute observation.
Okay. Further discussion or questions? Member Porter.
I'd like to know if in the allocations for some of the elementary schools that have had small class sizes, will that still exist? Because when I attended the showcase of schools, some of the narratives for the elementary schools no longer had small class sizes in there. So will small class sizes still exist for the elementary schools?
Yes, ma'am. And Ms. Porter, I think one of the issues that we we're recognizing in terms of making information available to parents is we had what we called in the past optional programs, and so small class size was considered an optional program, but when you applied for the school and you were in the school, it didn't matter if you applied for the optional program with small class size or it was just through the cluster assignment process, you were in a school that had small class size. So small class size is not going away in this allocation standards. It's just a matter of now we've taken the barrier of parents having to apply for that program.
Okay. Then one other question, and this will be a Ralph question, because I have to ask a Ralph question. I'm curious to understand the relationship between the building projection numbers that you give versus facilities, because they have never been the same in the 39 years that I worked for the district, and they still are not the same. So are there two different formulas that are used to come up with the student numbers? And if yes, which I think yes is the answer,
Yes.
since we used to work next door to each other, could you explain that so everyone understands what the difference is, please?
I think just generally, in a nutshell, some of the capacity numbers you'll see, building capacity, use a general formula like a number like a 25 kids per room over the entire building. Whereas program capacity looks specifically at each school, how they use it. Do they use a room that has like an EBD, self-contained 8 kids? Then we wouldn't allot that 25 seats, that would be 8 seats. But it would allow for schools who typically use a lot of overages, those are seats that kids can use, and those would be built into the program capacity.
But we do see two different sets of numbers, if I'm not mistaken. If I look in the facilities book, I get one number, whereas if I look at some of these numbers, they do not necessarily agree with each other. Am I correct?
Well, if you're comparing apples to apples, the program capacity numbers, we update them every year because we survey each school every year, so we know how that building changes and how they're using each room. And the same may be true for the optimal capacity, depending on their formula. But if you're comparing apples to apples, they can change year to year because they're updated every year based on new data.
So one, I think, key difference between program capacity and optimal capacity is optimal capacity has a multiplier for Title I status. So if you're a Title I school, there's a multiplier there that allows for additional space for interventions and things of that nature.
Okay. Thank you. I just had to ask a Ralph question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Wellner?
Yeah, thank you for the information, and I'm going to vote against this, and I just wanted to explain why. So, Ralph, your numbers are legendary for being right on target, so I'm not questioning the numbers by any means. And Dean, I appreciate so much what you're saying about the need for the systemic work to happen, for the conversations with the community, and to understand how student assignment changes may impact choices that parents make and all of that. But we've had the facilities study for some number of months. And so, when I see the number of schools that they are assigning students to those schools well above the capacity of those buildings and the impact that has, particularly, I'm sort of making this up, but particularly at the middle school level when people are crammed into buildings at a particularly energetic age, I just think it's a problem. And so I appreciate your comments about the need for the systemic conversations and the systemic work. I would have liked to have heard, prior to when we have to vote on it, that those systemic conversations were already well underway. And if they were well underway and we were still going to have some buildings that were overcrowded, I would be much more inclined to say yes to this. But the fact that we're right up against the deadline, that the real work that needs to happen to best serve our students with the facilities we have is why I'm going to need to vote no. But thank you all for your work. Very much appreciate it.
Member Kolb.
I'm just wondering, we've talked about program capacity versus optimal capacity. On the documents, it lists program capacity. Do we not have optimal capacity numbers yet for all the schools, or?
We do have optimal capacity numbers in the infrastructure needs assessment book that Dr. Razor put out. Those need to be, those actually have been updated. We don't have a new book out, but those are based on, in part, on the projections. And that's the information in terms of the 9 schools that are over the optimal capacity. That's over the optimal capacity for 17, 18. So for example, just an example, Shelby was a school that was over capacity last year. Cochrane in the city was one that was under capacity. And so one of the strategies that we did was to move the early childhood classrooms from Shelby to Cochrane, and that allowed Shelby to be under that 115% that Mike uses in the facilities review, and it helped Cochrane as well. So we're looking for opportunities like that we can take advantage of, but also need to make sure that when we understand that when we make a change, it can have a domino effect on multiple schools.
Sure. Would it would be, and maybe there's a reason that this can't happen, it would be really nice to have an optimal capacity column, on this, so we could, I mean, Atherton, for instance, is, yeah, it's, my suspicion is well over optimal capacity, but you wouldn't know that, looking at this document, so it would be helpful to have.
We can definitely add that and provide that to the board.
Any further questions or discussion? Just to add my 2 cents. My understanding is that in the past, there had been a column that had the program capacity versus optimal capacity. Was it on this document, or am I thinking of a different document?
This is the first time. Optimal capacity was just introduced in March of last year.
Let me rephrase the question. JCPS capacity versus state capacity.
Oh, yes, there is a state capacity number as well, so,
Okay.
yes.
Because I know that there's been a fair amount of discussion over the years, at least that I've been on the board, where there's JCPS's numbers, and then there's what the state says is, for lack of a better term, optimal capacity, or what they see as what that building should hold. And I know that some of that's based on program review, and we've had this discussion over and over and over again. My concern on this is, well, I understand where we are. Doesn't mean I'm not concerned. Member Horn is correct that there are a number of things that are integrated here, kind of referring back to my previous comment. It seems that we have these different silos, and they're all kind of doing their thing as they should, because they're operating the way they should, but they're not necessarily interconnecting, and they're not moving together. The concern is on this point is that we're still having issues. I'm a big proponent of smaller class size, having experienced that myself as an educator. I know that there's been some data out there, some studies, depending on who you read, class size doesn't matter. Depending on who you also read, class size really does matter, and the optimal capacity is 18:1. That's a very expensive student ratio, a student-teacher ratio to deal with. To that end, that requires us to have a more holistic view of how to plan if we're to make some type of change, even down to a 22:1 or 20:1. That being said, I will say, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're actually under what the state capacity is, because the state law is 25:1. Am I correct for elementary?
And I think we fund for 24:1.
Yes. So, and for for middle and high schools, 31:1, or something along those lines.
Okay. Yes, I think overall we're funding at a greater rate than
Right.
what
So
the
we're
state
already
ratios
under
are.
where we are state law. Not that that is ideal. I'm just going to put it out there, especially for some of folks that may not know that we're actually already under that by what the law requires. Kind of moving on, and I'll wrap it up here by saying that before we really started getting into any systemic types of changes, we also need to do a holistic, comprehensive facility review. So that's what that committee is that we talked about earlier today in a work session, and we talked about, and we mentioned a little bit here during our general meeting. that is going to be really, really important. So we get all these parts moving together, and we know, how we can best use the space adequately and more effectively. Not just because I'm not a big fan. I've taught on a stage while next to a cafeteria that is serving lunch, and that with a curtain, with nothing but a curtain dividing the two, and that's not fair to the folks in the cafeteria, and it's not fair to the folks on stage. It's not fair to the teacher who has to teach that. It's not fair to the school that's being held to a certain accountability standard. There's all sorts of issues with that. We talked about that. Other members have talked about that. I've talked about that. But I also understand that there's a lot of discussion that has to take place before we get to a solution. So I'm going to vote for this with obvious reservations, but that's only because I know that there are other steps that need to be taken to get to this. And hopefully we'll not be revisiting this next year, or at least we have a lot more context if we do. So with that said, is there any further discussion or questions? Member Geese.
I'd just like to echo Member Brady's statements. I'm not exactly pleased with the numbers, and being a JCPS student, I'm aware of times where I walked into a classroom, and this is under 10 years ago, please keep in mind, where there were 35 students in a classroom. You can't learn in that environment, and that's something that we need to make our utmost responsibility to ensure that teachers have the number of students for optimal learning. So I will give it my vote of support in order to pass it along to the next step, similar to Member Brady. But we need to really step back and consider our philosophy regarding class sizes.
All right. With that being said, I'll ask for a motion to approve the student enrollment projections for 2017-18. Is there a motion? Member Duncan motions. Is there a second? Member Brady seconds. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? And the vote is 4-3. The motion passes. Thank you. At this time, it is 9:15, and I have, as a new board chair, I have made it a point to adopt something that our classrooms do, and that is to take at least we'll say 3-minute break. Is that okay for everyone? And the idea here is not just for us, but for you too, is to get up out of your chair, because it's not healthy for you to sit so long. So just get up, stretch, use the facilities. We'll be back in 3 minutes. All right. So we're going to start back here. I hope you enjoyed that little break. I know that Member Gies is on his way back. Excellent. Member Horn, you know, it's that time of the year where our temperature goes up and down, and everyone's, you know, Vice Chair Wilner and myself are coughing up here, and I'm sure we're not making the most attractive team at the moment. But Member Horn is also under the weather, so she was a question of whether or not she's going to be able to make it tonight. She troopered through it, but now we're at a break. She took a moment to be able to, you know, go rest. So just want to let you know where she went. So we're going to continue on. Next item up on our agenda, excuse me, thank you very much, is the approval of school allocation standards for fiscal year 2017-18. So, and now I'll turn this over to Dr. Hargens to give more detail.
Okay, CFO Harden will come forward. Actually, this is the formula, the dollar formula that based on the enrollments that students or that schools will be given allocations or their dollars as was discussed so they can begin to build their budgets, work with their SPDMs and their school staffs to build their budgets. So Cordelia?
Yes, we typically give the allocations out to the schools the first week of February. It's based on these allocation standards as well as the projections that Dr. Dawson talked about. That's what we use as preliminary. Of course, we have the fifth day adjustment that comes at the working budget, so we actually adjust to actual attendance at that point of enrollment, not attendance, but actual enrollment. So at this point, by accepting these standards, we allocate to the schools. They can then start purchasing their staffing, their supplies, and then we have the add-ons that also come forward. And then as Tom had explained previously, we will have budget requests that come in from schools as well as departments to support special areas that each school may have. And all of those come together. We, in collaboration with Dr. Dawson's area and finance, we compare those as far as to the strategic plan and the priorities of the district that the board has put forward to us. And we take those then to the cabinet, and the cabinet reviews, and after that review, then it comes back to you all. It's a process we started last year. On March 21st, we come forward and say, here's the budget request that we are suggesting that we approve. This year, we're also going to, at the request of the board, have a list of those other requests that didn't come forward, at least did not come forward as far as the cabinet to meet that priority level. So you'll have a list of what the cabinet is recommending as well as everything else that was presented and has not come forward. Any questions?
All right, so any questions or discussion regarding this item? Vice Chair Wilner.
Just a quick question, Cordelia. So I know that the Newcomer Academy, you know, our largest growing population, and they don't get allocations, right? They get funded through a different mechanism.
Yes.
What would need to change? Would it be these allocation standards? What would need to change so that Newcomer got allocations, that they could also be hiring, you know, their staff and getting their house in order for next year?
They get allocation at the same time. We have what we call the regular schools, and then we have special schools and special programs. ESL is one of those, and they get their allocations, but they also may have budget requests that come in that would be approved based on the population they're getting. In the case of ESL, it is different as far as the needs are different, which is what this board has asked for all schools, actually. And we try to do that, as I mentioned before, with the add-on programs to make sure we're providing what schools need. And then, but for ESL and other programs, again, it's funded according to the needs, the program that is at the Newcomer Academy.
All right, any further discussion or comments? Questions? All right. Seeing that there isn't any, my only comment would be what I said before also applies to this, so. All right, so I'd like to, is there a motion to approve the school allocation standards for fiscal year 2017-18? Member Duncan moves. Is there a second? Member Brady seconds. All in favor? All opposed? And it is 4-2. Motion passes. Next item up on the agenda is, our action item agenda, is approval for the 2016-17 School Nutrition and Physical Activity Report, which I understand this is by and large a required compulsory document. So, and at that time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hargens to make an introduction.
Right, and this was actually approved to be posted for feedback, and this is actually pending approval of the final report. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Razor and Dr. Herring.
And Chair Brady, you are absolutely correct. This is completely a compliance document. And if you recall back to the painful meetings of post 2 years ago, where I actually had to read the entire document to you to comply with the bureaucratic regulation, this will be much, much better. Also, just so no one ever accuses operations of not being nimble, I would like to announce Meatless Mondays will be piloted very, very soon. And nutrition staff will be reaching out to Mia tomorrow to have her work with them as a consultant on those. So also, I would be remiss if, before we start, if I don't thank Ann Perryman, who's our district health coordinator, Donna Benton, who is our practical living specialist, and Julia Boucher, director of school and community nutrition services, who did the yeoman's work of putting this report together. And this is basically a diary that follows what we have done over the last year into the areas of physical nutrition and health.
And Dr. Razor has already acknowledged Ann Perryman and Donna Benton, and so I stand here in agreement and in support representing academic services.
And now what we will do, instead of reading the school physical nutrition report to you, we will let the wonderful students in our PRP Communications, Media, and Arts Magnet show you what it actually looks like in real life.
Hello, I'm Ariel Finley.
And I'm Roberto Mile, and we're bringing you the 2016-2017 Jefferson County Public Schools Nutrition and Physical Activity Report. Each year since 2007, JCPS has required a report on the nutrition and physical activity environment in the district. School and community nutrition services, student health services, and practical living representatives collaborate to gather the information for this report.
Our report highlights information provided in the written report, which was approved by the board on November 15th and can be viewed on the JCPS website. These reports meet the state and federal reporting requirements related to the district wellness policy.
The district wellness policy is reviewed annually and revised as needed by the District Coordinated School Health Committee, which also serves as the District Wellness Committee. The committee is comprised of school and community partners and uses the whole school, whole community, whole child model from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The goal is to provide a framework for greater alignment, integration, and collaboration between health and education to improve each child's cognitive, physical, social, and emotional development. The current district wellness policy was approved in January of 2016 and is available on the JCPS website.
In a recent survey completed by 83 schools, all elementary schools reported that they have a school wellness policy that meets the state requirements. Non-secondary schools and 2 special schools also have a school wellness policy. 71% of schools that responded stated that they have a school wellness committee. Other results from this survey can be found on pages 6 and 7 of the written report.
Moving forward in the area of school wellness policies, our recommendation is to support secondary schools in creating their own school wellness policy. Members of the District Wellness Committee are in the early stages of creating a wellness toolkit to promote this effort.
Now let's turn to an update on the physical activity environment in JCPS schools.
Physical activity is an integral component of a child's physical, social, and academic development. Participation in moderate to vigorous physical activity improves learning in the classroom by having a positive impact on attention, focus, and behavior. Most immediately after engaging in physical activity, students are better able to concentrate on classroom tasks, which can enhance learning. Kentucky law requires that school-based decision-making councils of each elementary school to develop and implement a wellness policy. That includes goals for moderate to vigorous physical activity each day. In February of 2016, Commissioner Pruitt issued the following guidance. In order for our elementary schools to count recess as an instructional time, in accordance with Kentucky Revised Statute, and also in compliance with the school's calendar regulation, both of the following criteria must be met. First, all elementary schools must yearly review and possibly revise their local wellness policy regarding goals for daily moderate to vigorous physical activity. Second, student learning objectives for recess activities are aligned with Practical Living Kentucky academic standards and are evidenced via lessons plan. Third, recess, when counted as instructional time, cannot be withheld or taken away as a form of punishment. Moving forward in the area of physical activities, our recommendations for continuous growth and improvement are to continue to educate and to support our schools in full implementation of these 3 state requirements for daily moderate to vigorous physical activity in our elementary school students.
The Health Promotion Schools of Excellence HPSC program is being implemented in 43 schools for the 2016-17 school year. Schools selected for the HPSC program strive to improve health attitudes, skills, and behaviors for each of the 10 components of the whole school, whole community, whole child model from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The WSCC model builds on the traditional elements of the coordinated school health approach with the following components: nutrition, environment, and services, physical education and physical activity, employee wellness, social and emotional school climate, physical environment, health services, counseling, psychological and social services, community involvement, family engagement, and health education.
HPSC schools encourage physical activity among students through a variety of different programs. Walking and running programs such as Run Louisville Run, Cross Country, and Girls on the Run have been popular choices for students in schools across the district, as they can reach a large number of students and are very inclusive. Each HPSE school hosts a healthy school celebration to encourage healthy nutrition habits. Last year, Guttermouth Elementary added a health and nutrition component into school's math and science night, and Fairdale High School students participated in Cooking Matters programs. The goal of these programs is for our youth to experience healthier food and snack alternatives.
Now we have an update on the nutrition environment. Nutrition education and promotion are important parts of educating the whole child and influencing lifelong healthy eating behaviors. During the 2015-16 school year, school and community nutrition services staff members attended and hosted numerous schools and community events. During these events, information about school meals, healthy eating, My Plate demonstrations, and other evidence-based nutrition messages were shared with approximately 15,000 people. Besides educating students and parents, SCNS also provides training to all department employees to ensure they are equipped to deliver healthy school meal programs. Training topics include strategies for promoting healthy choices, using smarter lunchroom techniques, and the role of nutrients including fat, carbohydrates, protein, and vitamins and minerals in building a healthy student body. School and Community Nutrition Services continues to plan menus that meet current USDA requirements, including limits on fat, calories, and sodium. SCNS values our students' opinions by hosting student nutrition advisory councils. These groups act as ambassadors for healthy eating and taste test new products and recipes for possible inclusion on our menu. 22 of our schools tested and evaluated items during the 2015-16 school year. Let's watch a clip from one of the SNAC groups.
Let us know your true, honest opinions about what's on the menu, because we do take stuff off.
Look on your sheet and find the item pepper jack enchilada. The form is very laid out to get specifics. How does it look? How does it taste? How does it feel in your mouth? And then they have a category of whether it's very good, fair, not good, and they have a place where they can put comments about it.
I think it's pretty good.
They can give suggestions on it was too tough, or it was kind of mushy in my mouth, whatever.
It feels like crunchy, and when you bite into it, you can feel like the cheese and all the stuff mixed into it.
SCNS continues to use the popular NutriSlice app to ensure menu and nutrition information. Students can also rate menu items using the app. SCNS continues its commitment to local foods through bids and contracts with local farmers. During National Farm to School Week, SCNS featured local chicken, corn, butternut squash, apples, and other items on its menus.
In summary, many positive things are occurring in JCPS schools related to improving the nutrition and physical activity environment.
Nutrition Services is bringing more local foods, cleaner labels, more student input in school meals, and better access to healthier options and nutrition information.
Practical Living and HPSE are playing a vital role by providing more opportunities to engage in physical activities during the school day and increasing awareness of how important movement is in keeping students motivated and ready to learn.
Going forward, Practical Living, Health Promotion Schools of Excellence, and Nutrition Services leaders in coordination with the District Coordinated School Health Committee will continue to support positive physical activity and nutrition environments that supports JCPS student achievement.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any questions or comments about that? Awesome. So, moving on, I'd like to have, is there a motion to accept for approval, the 2016-17 School Nutrition and Physical Activity Report? Is it Member Duncan motions, is there a second? Vice Chair Wilner seconds, all those in favor? All opposed, and it's unanimous. Thank you, and also thank you to PRP for putting that together. It's much more enjoyable, no offense to Dr. Razor, but it's much more enjoyable to see PRP students, or any student, or anybody else's student, than to see Dr. Razor read from the page. Nothing personal, exactly. All right, so now we come to the consent calendar. Now, I believe we had previously motioned and moved to remove item R, which was the new policies, and that's going to go through the calendar committee, or not calendar, policy committee once it's constituted, and then it will come back through the board. Are there any other items that need to be pulled down? Member Duncan.
Just a question on N2.
N2 is the approval of memorandum of agreement between College Board and JCPS schools, correct?
Yes. I wasn't sure, and I know I talked to Dr. Hargens last night about this, but all of our schools that offer advanced placement will be a part of this program. Is that right?
We do have the opportunity, Board Member Duncan, for all, I'm sorry. Yes,
Sorry.
No problem. For all of our schools to participate in the year-long pilot. We will continue to meet with our area superintendents and ensure that all schools who offer the courses are available and able to participate. But it is indeed open to all schools.
And $3,000 available for each?
AP coordinator, not teacher, but coordinator, and that would be those individuals who are responsible for orchestrating and organizing tests and making sure resources are in place and that all of the elements that are a part of the pilot are in place. And that is also inclusive of training. So they take on a bit more responsibility in this process.
And it's just for calculus and world history?
No, ma'am, it is for all AP courses. There are resources that are available, but with AP Calculus and AP World History, there are unit quizzes and an item bank that will also be made available, which is a new component to this pilot, which provides an additional support for our students and, of course, for teachers as it relates to training and preparation and ultimately higher performance on the AP exam.
And we will, at the end of this year, look at if we've increased a number of kids who earn that 3 or better, and we will judge, I guess, probably this program by that.
We will look at that. We have current data in place in terms of performance that's been provided by College Board. We will also look at the increase in the number of students who are also choosing to take the AP courses and then to also take the exam, and of course, look at how our scores have resulted based on the resources.
Well, I know that's a challenge. It's a lot of kids take the course, but then the exam itself is kind of a stopping point for them. They don't take the exam.
Correct.
And so we hope that this helps them feel more confident to take these exams. But thank you so much, Lisa.
Absolutely.
All right, is there an item to pull, or is there a question?
Question.
All right.
You had mentioned that item R was going to be pulled. Does that also include R.2, public?
It's all of R.
All of R. Okay, and then I had one additional question as well. I'd like just a bit more information about the memorandum of agreement for behavioral and mental health services. Just this Saturday, I participated in a conversation with all elementary, middle, and high school principals in District 4. And across the board, elementary, middle, and high, mental health was a large concern of theirs. I was just wondering if you could walk me through that memorandum and our district's efforts to ensure that those services are being provided.
Okay. Walk you through the memorandum tonight. And if so, can I bring Dr. Averett up with me as well to go through that so that we can get your questions
Yes.
answered? Oh, I'm sorry. She's sending.
Mr. Geese, my name is Joe Barjona. I'm the lead psychologist for the district. So what you're seeing there today, or what we're asking for you folks to approve of the memorandum of agreement, we have some partners in our community who provide behavioral health services for kids. And so what we're trying to do is, some of those folks are already in our schools, and the memorandum of agreement is an understanding between them and the district to ensure that the folks who are coming into the schools are properly credentialed, they have license, they have malpractice insurance, and they've met a basic threshold. And so that's what these are. We've had about 14 already established with other organizations. This is just the latest one with Cornerstone. Excuse me. And other questions about it, or?
No, that was my only question. I'm wondering also if you could provide me some deeper information about the services that our district provides in regards to mental health, but that can be done via email between us personally.
That'd be great.
We'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Any items to be pulled? Okay, I do have one, which would be item N.3. This particular item is for approval of agreements, and it's the approval of memorandum of agreement with Crocus Academy Fagenbush to expand early Head Start services to additional eligible students ages 6 weeks to 3 years old. I'm pulling this item, so what I want to do is we're going to come back to that and discuss it and vote on it separately. But in the meantime, we need a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item N.3. Is there a motion? Vice Chair Wilner motions. Is there a second? Member Gies. All those in favor? All opposed? And the motion is unanimous. It so moves. All right. So the item that I wish to discuss real quick is really not so much to discuss, but just to make a concern. This particular item is a memorandum of agreement with for early Head Start services at a separate business, but it is a non-secular business. It's a religious affiliated business. The particular agreement calls for close to $500,000 worth of expansion at that particular business. I have no real questions on this. I've had my questions answered, but I will be voting against this because I feel that even though that our legal attorney has somewhat given his approval of this, I still have questions, and I'm not sure how to me, the questions of separation of church and state are just too much because we are really augmenting another institution's facilities, and I think that in some ways supports, maybe indirectly, but supports non-secular organizations. So that's just my explanation of that. If there's any other comments or questions, are there? Vice Chair Wilner.
Frank, could you give your thoughts to what Chair Brady just mentioned?
Yes, I did review the agreement and reviewed the applicable regulations of the Department of Health and Human Services. There's also executive orders that were issued by President Bush and President Obama that basically say that agencies cannot discriminate against faith-based providers in the Head Start program, but regulations also say that those faith-based providers cannot include explicitly religious activities in the programs, and the agreement, and there were some changes made to the agreement after it was first presented, I believe is consistent with the regulations and the executive orders, and the protections are in place to prevent the issues that Chair Brady is concerned about.
Okay.
When we looked at this particular facility before, I know they have practices where they only recognize certain celebrations, certain holidays, other, kinds of secular holidays or cultural holidays. The facility wouldn't allow those. Would Head Start be an exception, would be completely separate from the school's policies with regard to observation of cultural days?
Under the regulations, any such celebrations have to take place outside school time, and they have to be voluntary for the parents to have their children engage in.
And Dr. Wilner, if I can interject, in item B9, it says that the provider will maintain the building and a self-contained autonomous classroom with playground facilities daily to satisfy compliance regulations and requirements of Head Start. The classroom itself will operate as a separate entity within the child care provided site and will not adhere to any religious policies, procedures that guide the operations of the facility as a whole. And so we made sure that that was included. Then also we included failure to do so will result in immediate notice of termination of this agreement by the Board of Education.
Any further discussion or comment? Okay. Is there a motion to approve item N.3 of the consent agenda? Motion made by Member Cole. Is there a second? There's a second by Member Duncan. All those in favor? All those opposed? The vote is 5-1. Motion passes. All right. So now that we're done with the consent agenda, we're going to move on to our next item, which is a tie bid. And Vice Chair Wilner gets to do this. It'll be the first time she gets to do this, and she will. There are tie bid for one or more tie bids. You may want to speak to what, does it tell you what bid is?
Oh.
She'll need to read that.
Please read the following. It says, item number 436 on bid ID 7345 for instructional and office supplies line item, one draw for one item, and the item is awarded to I'll get better at this. Pyramid School Products, Inc.
All right. Yeah, it's not quite as exciting as the Oscars. Okay. We understand. But for them, it is, exactly. All right. All right, so now we need to vote to award the tie bid. Is there a motion to award the tie bid? Member Porter, Member Gee seconds. All those in favor? And it's unanimous. Motion passes. All right, on to the next item, which is the board planning calendar. Is there any discussion or comment regarding the board planning calendar? All right, hearing no discussion or comment regarding board planning calendar, is there a motion to receive the planning calendar made by Member Porter? Is there a second? Made by Member Gee. All those in favor? And it passes. The motion is unanimous. Next item is board reports. Are there any board reports? Vice Chair Wilner.
My report is in writing. I just want to mention that Say Yes is part of the report, and at the next meeting, I think we're going to be asked to, for a letter of commitment to say yes, and the landscape has shifted from the last time we were asked to sign that. So please, I encourage you to take a look at the report, and if you have questions, you can feel free to direct them to me or to Jonathan prior to the next meeting. And the other thing that I just want to pull out from my report, last night I was at the Louisville Urban League with Ms. Porter and with Dr. Hargens and Dr. Marshall, and there was a presentation about the Males of Color Academy. Roz Akins was, very compelling and charismatic and full of wonderful information about the work that she's doing in Lexington. In particular, she really, I think, highlighted for me, helped me to understand the strong connection between the BMW Academy and the Carter G. Woodson Academy. She described BMW Academy, which she founded and directs, as like the booster club for Carter G. Woodson. So that was helpful. And the other thing that she referred to repeatedly in her talk was the culturally responsive teaching, the culturally responsive curriculum materials that they use across subject areas, and the hands-on, all of which is incredibly in line with our Vision 2020. And I just wonder, and I guess Dr. Hargens, this is I'm just curious if there are resources, curriculum materials that they're using now that we might adopt, steal, borrow, adapt for use in, perhaps multiple of our schools, that, maybe there's no need to wait to share in some of the innovative approaches that she talked about.
Actually, Dr. Marshall and I will pursue that.
Any other reports? Member Duncan.
I attended local school board member advisory council meeting in Frankfort with Commissioner Pruitt, and we basically reviewed two areas. One was what's happening with charter schools and their proposed legislation, and the other was the accountability system and some of the changes on the horizon for that. And I think, I know at the meeting I asked if anybody has introduced anything that says that charter schools must outperform public school, public schools, in order to keep their charter. And there is no mention of that in any of the legislation. So that's kind of an odd thing, because charter schools are based or built on that idea of that they will outperform the public school, and that's why they stay open. So it's not been in any of our proposals yet. There were questions about authorizers, and they're trying to settle on, it's multiple authorizers versus school board authorizer, and I think they're using models from other states to talk about that. Another item that was related to charter schools that has been discussed is the I forgot what I was going to say. The debate. I think there's a tension going on between the purpose of the charter schools, whether the charters should be serving the cherry-picked best performing kids, or whether charters should be serving underachieving kids. And it's kind of a funny thing, because both sides of this use closing achievement gaps as the reason for charter schools. So both, can both models do that? But it's kind of a tension going on between people's concept of what charter schools should be. Another issue related to that was, what's the role of the state school board in the charter school proposals? Where will they be? Will they be authorizers? Will they be monitors? Still not settled yet. But that was the first half of the meeting, and the second half of the meeting was about the accountability system. And there's several interesting changes, but one of the things I think it's still odd that we're we have an accountability system based on the idea that all students will perform above average. I mean, that's eventually the expectation over time, all schools will perform above average, which really doesn't make much sense. If everybody's above average, what's average? But anyway, that's how it's built. And then the reduction of novices is going to change and how that's measured, because a lot of schools got punished. If you didn't have a whole bunch of novice kids, then your scores wound up being hurt by the reduction of the few that you did have. It couldn't compare to schools that had large numbers of novice kids and the reductions they went through. So that's a feature that's going to be different. The growth idea, which to me it ties into our innovation thoughts here about what we're going to be, how we're going to be measuring growth of students. Each student is supposed to have a goal, a learning goal, and it's how close that student comes to that learning goal. The schools are going to be compared and well, judged based on the students reaching their own individual learning goals, which I think is extremely interesting. Managing this is going to be a challenge, but I think it's a very interesting idea that that's what that students and teachers set goals, and it's the students meeting their goals that's going to be one of the measures of growth that we use. Also, well, you know, we've talked about groups and tracking performance of groups, and finally it's emerging in here that how important it is to track the progress of each group. During our meeting, they said they were going to track kids who are not on free and reduced lunch, and we talked about advanced kids, because that's a tested group and it needs to be tracked separately. But then when I read the paper that we received and took home afterwards, neither one of those groups is on there. So I'm concerned about that. I think you can't just blend those into the other groups, or you distort the performance of those other groups. So anyway, those are just some of the features of the accountability system. Dr. Hargens knows many more, and I'm hoping that someday that she can share some of the progress that she thinks it's making as this is being defined and brought along, and we hope resulting in an accountability system that we can have faith in and support. But no, I did not write this out, but we had quite a few items of the new accountability system that I thought were interesting. One more that just occurred to me was that competency-based measures. And I thought, okay, finally, we've gotten away from proficiency-based measures, competency-based measure. And I mean, I've talked about this for years. There's a level between apprentice and proficient, and it is competent. And we've never included that in any of our designs of trying to classify learning. So I'm thrilled that competency-based measures are going to be looked at. And of course, that's, you know, other things about standards. There were just a whole bunch of things, but it was a very great meeting for us to get a chance to get caught up on the progress of these things in the legislature and progress of throughout the state, of the contributions throughout the state of people on the accountability system.
Okay. Any other reports from board members? Member Geese.
Yes, I'll be brief. I just wanted to update the board and members of our staff about my conversation this past weekend. Saturday morning, I had the opportunity to meet with every elementary, middle, and high school principal in District 4. I wanted to make that one of my goals in being a new board member, to really address the needs of my particular district. And I also wanted to make the board aware of my postcard project that's being implemented in all District 4 schools now. Each staff person, classified or certified in every school, received a letter written from me introducing myself and also introducing my vision for District 4. Those were given to the principals personally on Saturday at the Southwest Community Library, and they were instructed to be handed out in faculty meetings this week at school in each of the District 4 schools. I'm on a fact-finding mission, and my 3 questions that each teacher, administrator, custodian, nutrition worker, essentially everyone who has a stake in the school, what they're telling me are, number 1, what is the greatest need in your school? Number 2, how can the Board of Education support your school's mission? And number 3, and most interestingly, if you could change one JCPS policy for the better, what would that policy be? How might you change it? This I see as just an effective way to get out into the minds of those who know their schools best, which are our students, our parents, and the people who work at the school. I think the principals were really happy to hear someone from the board say that yes, you being in the school every day means that you know your school best. And so what I'll be doing over the next month, as these begin to trickle in through my mailbox and the board's mailbox, I'll be creating a list of some of the top issues that rise to the top. And I think that will help us to stay a little more grounded, at least from my view in District 4, what we need to work on, what can be put on the back burner, and what issue needs to be handled immediately. So I just wanted to update everyone on that. I'm not saying that it's something that you have to do, but it was certainly well received by the members of my district. So if it's something that you'd have interest in, I'm more than happy to pass this along to use as a template in your districts as well. Also, really quickly, I had the opportunity to attend the Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Awards Banquet at Wildwood Country Club Saturday night, sponsored by the JCTA. I would just like to commend the JCTA for putting that program on. It was a remarkable evening, and it's so wonderful to see that legacy honored, and also to know that we're keeping that dream alive by providing scholarship money and continuing the study of the civil rights movement. Thank you all for that.
Thank you. Any other? Member Cole?
I just want to say really quickly, once again, thank you to Field for hosting us. You did a great job, and thank you so much.
Any other comments? Member Porter?
I have several, 3, but I'll try to make them as short as possible. Going back to what Dr. Wilner said about being at the Louisville Urban League last night to hear Roz Akins talk about the Du Bois Academy and as it relates to experiences that she has had in Lexington with the Fayette County school system there, where she was a teacher and retired as a teacher. Project started at their church because they came to Louisville, Kentucky to see the Street Academy at the Urban League, and that's what they took to the church. And from the church, they took it to the community to make sure that folks were aware of what was going on. And I thought she did an excellent job last night. But one of the things that I thought was outstanding was there was a graduate from the program in Lexington, who made a decision to come to University of Louisville, I believe, and he had to decide whether football was his life or whether engineering was his life. And based on all the prompts and everything that he had received in the program, he chose engineering, and he's now an engineer at Ford Motor Company. So when you see young people, and I'll call him young because he is, stand up and give a testimony about the benefits of programs and what it has meant in their life, that makes a difference for me to hear those kinds of testimonials. So last night, I believe, was a community conversation, and I'd like to thank Diversity, Equity, and Poverty, because we've received a list of community conversations in our Friday update. It's also been posted on Twitter, I believe, so the information is out there. There are multiple opportunities to participate in the conversation. So congratulations to Roz Akins, congratulations to Diversity, Equity, and Poverty. And I also want to mention that as work goes forward, this is a program that will come from multiple sources, not just one office. I know Dr. Herring has had conversations about this because it is instruction also. So I'm excited about that. So that was last night's report. And going back to Saturday at the Stony Brook Theater, this is National Mentoring Month. Prior to President Obama leaving office, he signed a proclamation in December declaring January 2017 as National Mentoring Month. And some of the things from the proclamation quickly, It talks about mentorship and support of others. It's always motivated people to persevere. This month honors parents, families, teachers, coaches, and mentors. What we know for sure is nobody succeeds on their own, and that with the strength of others, and it gives them resilience as they move forward. So President Obama, during his tenure, instituted My Brother's Keeper. Every state has an opportunity to address opportunity gaps. The White House had a mentee program, and the work with higher education and expanding apprenticeships. So I would like to take this opportunity. We have many adults in our schools working with our students as mentors. And on Saturday, Dr. Harkins and I had an opportunity to be at Stony Brook to see Hidden Figures. And I would like to personally thank the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and the program at First Gethsemane Church for reaching out and being the adult mentors for these young people. And to say that after seeing Hidden Figures, I am an advocate. I was somewhat of an advocate, but I'm really on it now. So as we move forward, there will be an academy for young ladies, just like there will be an academy for young men, because it's important. And the reality of this program that you see in the movie, if you've not seen it, it was an apprenticeship program as we talk about career and tech and opportunities for students in college. Opportunities for math students who attended Hampton University to internship at NASA. And why is that important? Because the director of our computer education department, Dr. Sharis Lattimore, was one of those people that participated in that opportunity. So that's a little known secret, but we have a lot to be proud of in Jefferson County Public Schools. So I wanted to say that. And my last item was in the paper, not the paper, but the computer paper today. And I want to talk about a student who attended the Jefferson County Public Schools as elementary and middle school and part of high school. He attended two schools in District 1, the Brown School and Central High School. And his name is Bradford Young, and this morning he was nominated for an Oscar. He is a cinematographer. He is maybe the first male of color to be nominated for an Oscar. He is from Louisville, Kentucky. He is a product of the Jefferson County Public Schools. He graduated in Chicago. He did attend the Brown School and Central High School. And this is exciting. This is not the only thing that Bradford has done. He was a part of the movie Selma, which everyone has heard about, which many of us have had an opportunity to experience for ourselves. And Selma is significant to me because my daughter had an opportunity to walk the Selma Bridge. So if you've not had that opportunity, it's important. But again, focus on our students, the things that they are doing, and focusing on the adults that are doing good things for our students. So I am personally giving a shout out to Bradford Young, a product of the Jefferson County Public Schools. Again, we have a lot to be proud of in the Jefferson County Public Schools. That completes my report. Thank you.
That was pretty impressive. What film, by the way, does it say?
Yeah, I've got it in my phone. I'll tell you.
All right, we'll get back to that. Dr. Wilner, do you have any reports?
I already did.
Oh, yeah, you did that. I'm sorry. I'm so used to going in order now. All right, so I do have a couple of things I wish to discuss as well. First of all, I just want to say thank you to, and Jonathan, please help me if I miss someone, to Senators Syme, Rocky Adams, McGarvey, Neal, and Representatives Fleming and Jerry Miller for coming out to our legislative breakfast that we had out at Doss High School, as well as to the principal and staff at Doss, Dr. Polio for opening up his facility and allowing those legislators to get a better and deeper look into what we do every day here at JCPS. And also to the staff, the administration that presented, as well as Christy Rogers with the 5-star and the Career Academy schools. I know that was the main focus of what we were discussing, so I thought that went really well. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for that was a part of that. In addition to that, I also want to thank we'll say new, chair of the State House Education Committee, Representative Carney. He came out and visited 3 schools, which was Doss, Olmsted North, and Jacob, and I also wanted to thank their principals for opening up their facilities as well. I think that provided an insightful tour. Dr. Hargens and myself accompanied Representative Carney as well as Jonathan Lowe for those visits, and I think that I know I learned a lot, and I think Representative Carney learned a whole lot as well. So I want to say thank you to that, and also thank you to Representative Bratcher, who met with us yesterday regarding his new bill, and also to the administration that was a part of that meeting. There's again an opportunity to be able to continue dialogue and to provide insight into some of the what can sometimes be confusing and somewhat oblique inner workings of our school assignment plan and of our district. So, but I think that too was very insightful, and I always appreciate having a chance to be able to give more of a detailed look into our system, because we have fantastic people that know how to do that. So, and then one other thing, unfortunately, I will not be able to attend this weekend's program regarding the Imagination Library campaign that's being presented by our foundation and along with Wave TV Television and the Junior League. This is kind of better known as the Dolly Parton Book Program. In fact, I'm actually going to Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg this weekend because I have something I have to attend to. But so that's where that program started. But that's a fantastic program. It's really made a difference in Sevier County in Tennessee, where she is from, and it's something that's been replicated in other areas. And I'm glad to see that it's coming here. And kudos to Sam Corbett and the foundation for bringing that forward. Finally, I'd like to, in the theme of board appreciation, present to each of my colleagues a small gift in my appreciation. You can hog them, but they're all the same thing. And this is just a copy of one of my favorite movies. So Member Wilner can hold it up. And it is, yes, The Martian. So I just want to say thank you to my colleagues. The reason I like this movie and the reason I'm passing it out is because this movie, to me, is all about teamwork. There's really no protagonist in the movie unless you count Mars. And this is all about folks coming together to be able to go on a singular mission, and in this particular case, bring home an astronaut from Mars. No less complicated and important, and even more so important, is the daily mission that each of my colleagues dedicate their time and their energy, and quite frankly, their lives to our students. My wife refers to this as my security blanket movie. So, and I've been watching it a whole lot since November. So, and yes, I do realize that there is a slight breakdown in communication during or teamwork during the movie, but they recover nicely, and I think that's another example of how they come together. And yes, I realize as much as I would like to be as cool as Matt Damon or Mark Watney in this movie, I know that I'm really Mitch Henderson. So for those of you who watch the movie, you get that reference. So, but I want to, just on behalf of myself, just say thank you to my colleagues, and just a little token of my appreciation for everything that you all do, especially during, considering it's the month to celebrate that. All right, so hearing that there's no other issues, I'm sorry, and Member Porter.
For the conversations that are held with the elected representatives, for those of us that are not there, is there some way for us to get a summary? Because it's on a superintendent's calendar that, for example, Representative Kevin Bratcher, it would be helpful for me, and I think all of us, to know what that conversation looked like. Sure. And as they go out to the schools for the different breakfasts, all of us cannot be there. So if there's conversation that's pertinent to what could happen in Frankfort at this time, I would appreciate just getting a quick summary, please.
Sure, absolutely. I think we can provide that, and the administration will look into that. And if you always, at any time, if you ever have a question or concern, you know my number. So always reach out. Please don't hesitate. All right. So there's nothing to, excuse me, there's the Ohio Valley crud. There's nothing to approve regarding our board reports, and also we've already moved our folks wanting to address the board up. There is a need for an executive session, so let me read the verbiage for that. The board will conduct a closed section as permitted by KRS 61.810 1F. This is regarding Let me find that. Discussions or hearings that might lead to the appointment, discipline, or dismissal of an individual employee, member, or student without restricting that employee's members or the student's right to a public hearing if requested. This exemption shall not be interpreted to permit discussion of general personnel matters in secret. So is there a motion? Member Gee's motions, is there a second? Vice Chair Wilner seconds. All those in favor? All opposed? And it's unanimous. So we will now adjourn to our executive session, and we shall return shortly.